August 11th, 2014. Roll call, please.
Okay. Gordon Eggleton. Gary Ellingson is absent. Chester Narakis.
Here.
Roger Sprague.
Here.
Henry Quant.
Here.
Wes Ryan is absent. And Mayor Dick Anderson.
Here. Please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty. Well, so this is where everybody's hanging out this summer. It's so nice to see a full house for council meeting. Remind and welcome all those who typically stream us on the through the internet. It's always fun to be at a live performance as well, so thank you. First order of business is comments from citizens present. This is an opportunity for members of the audience to bring to the council's attention any item. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per citizen, and the city recorder will use the light system. Speakers may not yield their times to others, and as a general rule, this is not a time for exchange of questions. At the conclusion of this agenda item, a councilor may discuss or raise questions regarding an item presented by a citizen. If you desire your comments to be part of the public record of a specific public hearing that we have tonight, then you need to wait for that agenda item to be called. Otherwise, you are free to comment at this time. And our first is Roger Robertson. Oh, okay, thank you. Braden Cresswell.
Good evening. My name is Braden Criswell. I live in Rhodes End at 6269 Northeast Mast. And I'm here to speak tonight in support of the City Council resolution to recognize the Rhodes End Improvement Association, REIA, as the neighborhood association for Rhodes End. Over the past 10 years, it's been my honor to serve the citizens of Rhodes End, both as director and officer of the REIA. During this period, much of our efforts focused on issues related to annexation. As board members, we strive to ascertain and vigorously represent the opinions of Rhodes End residents and property owners to the City of Lincoln City. With annexation concluded, I believe the current REIA Board of Directors is making significant efforts to build bridges with the city commissions and administration in order to more effectively represent our property owners' concerns about livability, safety, traffic, and land use issues for our community. I believe that ultimately REIA efforts can and will assist city leaders in making better decisions about vital matters which concern this neighborhood. By formally recognizing REIA as the neighborhood association, the city's recognition can only strengthen our continued efforts to improve Rhodes End. For 42 years, REIA, its board, membership, and organizational structure has worked to maintain and improve the communication of its property owners and the unique environmental features of our residential area. REIA has given our residents and property owners a mechanism to discuss and voice their concerns both internally and to the city as a whole. It is my belief that the city recognition of REIA will enhance and improve Lincoln City as a whole. Thank you for this opportunity to speak again in support of REIA.
Thank you, sir. Diana Hinton?
Good evening. I'm Deanna Hinton, and I'm the president and spokesperson for the Roads End Improvement Association. I am a homeowner and a full-time resident in the Roads End neighborhood at 1928 Northeast 67th. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you in support of Resolution 2014-20, recognizing our neighborhood association. REIA has a long history that began with its founding in 1972, 42 years ago, as you just heard Braden say. Since that time, it has provided a voice for all citizens, residents, and property owners in our neighborhood. REIA has also provided opportunities for neighbors to gather, which is an important element of a neighborhood association. A few of our gatherings are organized annual picnics, and we just had one last weekend. I wish you all could have been there. It was really fun. We have an annual holiday party, and we have monthly board of directors meetings, and we also have monthly membership meetings. And at these gatherings, our neighborhood association discusses the issues, concerns, and successes within the neighborhood. We can debate, discuss, and solve problems. We can talk about the politics of the day and assess the future through planning meetings and committees. Some of our past and proposed neighborhood activities include monitoring neighborhood building sites for compliance with county and now city building codes, organizing special committees to represent community options about issues such as VRD management and property development, organizing neighborhood watch programs and community education programs about earthquake and tsunami awareness and preparedness, as well as other safety issues. We've been fortunate to have longtime Roads End resident and active REIA member Sheridan Jones as a regular speaker at our monthly meetings. He shares his expertise and advice about emergency preparedness, and we're thankful for his ongoing help with that. Residents and property owners of Roads End have had differences with Lincoln City in the past, but over the last year, REIA has made efforts to break down any remaining barriers and work together with the city. We look forward to continuing this cooperation with Lincoln City as Roads End Neighborhood Association. We believe we have substantially met the 11 standards for recognition as a neighborhood association within Lincoln City and ask the council to pass Resolution 2014-20. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you for coming forward. Jim Stovall?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Jim Stovall, treasurer of the Roads End Improvement Association. I am a homeowner and a full-time resident in Roads End at 6329 Northwest Logan Road. I'd like to give you some background about our association. Roads End neighbors started the Roads End Improvement Association in 1972 and officially organized in November 1975 by filing articles of incorporation with the state of Oregon. We applied for and received not-for-profit status from the Internal Revenue Service in March 1982 as a 501c4 organization. REIA's membership dues provide the means for our mailing address. We've had the same address for 4 decades. It's P.O. Box 182, Lincoln City, 97367. If that should change, we will notify the city. The first bylaws were written in 1982 and were recently amended in June of 2014. Our EIA meeting notices are advertised in several ways, more than a week in advance of the meetings, including on a sign displayed near the south entrance into the Roads End area, on our website and via email to our members. Our organization is managed by a board of directors elected by the members, and in the last year has had just over 400 members. Any and all of the residents and property owners within Rhodes End are encouraged to join the association. The city has informally recognized REIA for many years, even before annexation, by mailing to our P.O. box all land use notices and decisions on applications for vacation rentals, for example. On November 26, 2013, the City of Lincoln City signed a settlement agreement with the Rhodes End Water District and the Rhodes End Sanitary District. That agreement provided for REIA to be recognized as the neighborhood association for the Rhodes End neighborhood. Agreement item number 11 reads, Rhodes End Improvement Association. The city manager and planning director shall recommend that the City Council formally recognize the Rhodes End Improvement Association as a city neighborhood association, with all rights as provided under Lincoln County Municipal Code, Chapter 17. Thank you for providing us this opportunity to speak in support of the resolution on the agenda tonight, number 2014-20, in recognition of the Rhodes End Improvement Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shannon Locke? Locke. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Shannon Locke, Vice President of the Rhodes End Improvement Association. My family shares a home at 7477 Northwest Logan Road, and I'm here tonight to speak to you in support of Resolution 2014-20 that will recognize our neighborhood association. My family's been fortunate to own a home at the Oregon coast in the late 1930s in Cutler City and since 1968 in Rhodes End. We lived in Salem when I was growing up and owned a business that had 2 locations here in Lincoln City. I grew up weekends and summers here at the beach. Today I divide my time equally between Rhodes End and Portland. I work with the Connie Hansen Garden here in Lincoln City. Over the years, I've seen the importance of REIA to the neighborhood. In the past, neighbors have come together through the organization to plan and implement projects. In its early history, the association was instrumental in the development of the water system and sanitary sewer system for the entire neighborhood. Prior to annexation, REIA financially assisted property owners with road maintenance and repair by way of a dedicated budget item for that purpose. Currently, we are recruiting for a point person that we call our road warrior to continue to help property owners and residents of Rhodes End coordinate with the city to identify needs and maintain the roads in our area. We also have a tradition of collecting food donations for the Lincoln City Food Bank at our monthly membership meetings. As a fourth-generation Rhodes Ender, I'm dedicated to preserving the livability of our neighborhood for future generations. I'm enthusiastic about working on a neighborhood plan. In October of 2013, REIA began working with Lincoln City's Planning Department to develop a neighborhood plan. And we now have a list of ideas to be included in the plan, and we'll continue that effort. Lincoln City's Planning Department has also participated with REIA's Vacation Rental Dwelling Committee, which included VRD owners and managers, as well as residents and board members, in the development of a draft best planned management practices for Rhodes End. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And Elaine Walsh?
Good evening. My name is Elaine Walsh, and I reside at 1842 Northeast 69th Street in Rhodes End in Lincoln City. I am also a registered voter of Lincoln County, and I'm here speaking in support of Resolution 2014-20. I purchased my property in Rhodes End in 1974 as a much younger woman residing and working in Denver, Colorado, where I was working as a manager with seriously disturbed children and their families. I grew up in the Northwest, Spokane, Washington. I wished at some point in my life to retire here, and in 1974 had the opportunity to spend some time in Rhodes Inn. I came to appreciate the charm, the beautiful sunsets, and unique wide beach front enjoyed by residents and visitors alike. In 1977, I moved with my family to Portland and accepted a job with the City of Portland and to set up and administer the city's neighborhood mediation program. During my 35 years in Portland and subsequent retirement as an insurance agent for Farmers Insurance, 3 years ago, when I did retire, my family and I had been regularly visiting our Rhodes Inn home to enjoy time with family and friends. After my Rhodes Inn property purchase in 1974, I was contacted by a board member of our EIA, the Rhodes Inn Improvement Association, and asked if I wished to join the organization. Being a non-resident and hearing about the mission and goals of our EIA, and because I believed it was important to have representation in my new Oregon community, I became a member. To this date, I believe that was and remains an important decision. The Rhodes Inn Improvement Association, since its inception in 1972, is the neighborhood organization that has and continues to represent the interests and values of Rhodes Inn residents and property owners. The Rhodes Inn community includes, as you have heard, many generational property owners who value the history, beauty, and serenity of that neighborhood. Our EIA provides historical continuity regarding the unique character of the Rhodes Inn area, where family and friends gather to enhance and improve the quality of life for its members as well as its non-members. Since its beginning in 1972, the Rhodes Inn Improvement Association has been and continues to be a vital advocacy voice where residents and property owners socialize and provide a neighborhood watch network to discuss and problem-solve issues important to its mission. I fully support your adoption of REIA as the official city-recognized neighborhood association of Rhodes Inn. I believe this organization will govern in a fair and equitable manner, be good stewards of the values and goals of Rhodes Inn property owners, and work with the city to that end. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Mitchell Moore.
Good evening. My name is Mitchell Moore. I live at 2929 Northeast Loop Drive. I am here tonight to talk about the Devil's Lake Neighborhood Association as their spokesman. My comments were submitted written, so I'll make my message tonight short. I just wanted to say a few things. One, we, unlike the Rhodes Inn Improvement Association, are quite new. We have a 10-year history. However, it is just of interested people in the neighborhood who are paying attention to items, and we've decided it's time to organize and create a neighborhood association, which we have done. We were preceded by Paddle, again, a group of interested parties, and Paddle kind of has gone by the wayside. There really hasn't been a meeting in almost 5 years of Paddle, so we thought it was time to start something anew around the area and get the folks going and talking about issues together. And of course, there was a loose-knit group before that resulted in Grass Carp in Devil's Lake and the Devil's Lake neighborhood, the Devil's Lake Water Improvement District, clear back in the 80s. So we're just trying to keep that tradition of being caring and aware in the area going forward. In my written comments, you can see we tried to bring our proposed practices and our bylaws in line with city guidelines as outlined by Mr. Townsend. And I think we've done at least a reasonable job, and if there's a few more adjustments, just let us know, and we'll make that happen. We think we've got a great start. We've had 60 and 70 attendees at our meetings, and talking to the folks up in Portland who have much larger areas covered in their neighborhood associations, they get 9 and 10 people at their meetings. So we think we have some interest, and we haven't even really started to advertise. Our thought was, let's get recognized, which possibly could happen here, and then we'll put that out as we are your neighborhood association and solicit membership and move forward. So I just wanted to let you know we have 3 board members here tonight available. If there's any questions during your discussions, we're here, we care, we would like to get this moving forward at whatever it takes to have it happen. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Carrie, I saw her come in, yes. Shared? You've got it. How about Doug Ryder?
Good evening. I'm Doug Ride. It's W-R-I-D-E. Maybe my printing isn't so good.
Thanks.
Sure. I live at 6204 Northeast Logan Road. I was here last month to introduce Roads End property owners, REPO, to you all. And since that time, our membership has almost doubled. We're up to about 80 members today. We verified that all these members actually own property in Roads End. As I'm confident you all know, there's over 900 properties in Roads End. So although that's a small number, we're approaching 10% representation today. I see on tonight's agenda the recognition of REIA as a neighborhood association. And I want to be clear, REPO is not opposed to that. So we're not trying to battle that in any way, shape, or form. REPO has a singular focus of property rights, and being a neighborhood association, we recognize is much broader than that. It covers a lot more issues than that, and that's great, no problem. We just want to make sure that when someone owns property in Roads End, that they have protections and as much opportunity as is possible. Has already been discussed tonight. There's been some rocky history over the past few years with annexation, and you tack on that an overall global recession. And now with the annexation, we have the integration issues of what's going to happen in Lincoln City. And Roads End property values, like all property values in Lincoln City, have just been hammered in the last 6 years. So we have a number of homeowners that they need to sell or they want to sell their property, but maybe they can't sell at today's values. So we're going to do everything we can to help those values throughout the city and particularly in Roads End improve. We merely ask that you, the City Council, be open to listen and consider what REPO has to say in the future. REIA is one voice, and with their membership year just begun on July 1st, similar to our date of origin, we may have similar membership numbers. So maybe we represent 20% today. I don't know what their membership is, but that's getting to be a pretty good representation. I think we're all recognizing if we could get 20% voter turnout, we'd consider that a victory. So we just ask that you be open to our voice in the future. We'll come with statistical data and work with you to hopefully do good things for the Roads End part of the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Did anyone else wish to come forward that didn't have the opportunity to sign up? Mr. Green?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Green. I reside at 1490 Northeast Lake Drive in Lincoln City. I'm speaking in opposition to the request of Devils Lake Neighborhood Association for formal recognition. The first sentence of your resolution adopting standards for neighborhood associations states that, quote, "The boundaries of neighborhood association shall specifically define an area of appropriate geographic size and population." We don't need a dictionary to know what a neighborhood is. Lake Point is a neighborhood. Sand Point is a neighborhood. The area where we just established the sewer LID is my neighborhood. Other areas on the east and west sides of the lake constitute separate neighborhoods. No one can call all of these separate neighborhoods a single neighborhood or roll all of these neighborhoods into one neighborhood with a stroke of a pen. The proponents of this neighborhood association compare statistics about the average size of Portland neighborhood associations to justify the size of this one. If you want to look at proportionate size comparisons between Portland and Lincoln City, the proposed DLNA would cover about a third of the population of Lincoln City. If a neighborhood association was proposed in Portland that covered the same percentage of the Portland population, it would include 150,000 people. In both cases, you'd end up with multiple neighborhoods being covered by one association, and that's just not the intent. A major requirement is that the boundary of a proposed neighborhood association may not overlap that of an existing neighborhood association unless the existing neighborhood association consents in writing. Mr. Townsend has rightly pointed out that formal recognition of the DLNA could preclude recognition of any and all of the real neighborhoods I just mentioned. The DLNA would have a veto over future recognition of neighborhood associations for neighborhoods such as Lake Point, Sand Point, and my neighborhood. The DLNA sponsors try to repair that outcome by saying that their consent would not be unreasonably withheld. So they would be the judges of reasonableness and still have a veto over recognition of other neighborhood associations. Another requirement is that recommendations coming from the association should truly represent the neighborhood. The 60 or 70 people attending the two previous DLNA meetings are mostly lakefront owners from the east side of the lake. If you have attended or watched our DLWID board meetings, you know these folks have told us repeatedly, and often loudly and rudely, that the issue of most importance to them is raising the lake level by the maximum amount for the maximum time allowed by law each year. Yet, when the News Guard recently conducted a poll asking the question, should the Devil's Lake level be raised, 65% of the respondents said no. So these 60 or 70 people certainly cannot say they are representing the majority view of the 2,500 or so people in the proposed neighborhood associations. 2 months ago, the DLNA adopted something called Path Forward for Devil's Lake. That's a whole laundry list of very specific recommendations. That's dated May 8th, 2014. That was adopted with no more than the board of directors and a few members having any notice or input into those recommendations. And that's a good example of double whammy danger and inappropriateness of recognizing this association or any other association that attempts to represent more than one neighborhood. First, they'd have the ability to veto the existence of other neighborhood associations that might disagree with them, and then to represent their own views as the majority of their association. And then there's the administrative burden on the city. If the city formally recognizes the Devil's Lake Neighborhood Association, the city would be required to send advance notice to the homes of 2,500 people of land use applications, including site plan review applications and quasi-judicial applications in or affecting the neighborhood, and notice of any proposed changes in projects, services, and activities such as land use, quote, land use, transportation and traffic, parks and recreation, public services, and urban renewal, close quotes, having a significant effect on the neighborhood. This suppose for a moment that you voted to recognize this neighborhood association as proposed. And then someone else proposes that you recognize a neighborhood association for everyone on the west side of Highway 101 to the ocean, from south of Rhodes End to Cutler City. Let's call it the Pacific Ocean Neighborhood Association. How could you refuse? That makes just as little sense, but a very bad precedent would be established that would be hard for you to ignore if you had recognized the Devil's Lake Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And did anyone else not get the opportunity to sign up, wish to make comments? All right. Hearing none, thank you. Let's move on to, we have a volunteer appreciation opportunity right now. Dr. Sheraton Jones and his staff, someone going to present Dr. Jones to the public. He's so not very well known.
I guess I have to do it from here. I can't find him.
Oh, right.
Oh, there you are, right up front.
Get him up here on camera, yeah.
Not going to be able to make it.
Let me just start this, and I hope, Mayor, that maybe you'll recognize a few people from the audience that may want to speak to this. It's my great pleasure to honor Dr. Sheraton Jones, who's been our volunteer coordinator for a long time. I've been here 15 years, just about, and Sharon was well into planning and working towards a safer community when I got here, and kept that ball rolling through a transition, and has been prodding and pushing and planning ever since. And I have to say that this community at large is a lot safer today because of Dr. Jones. He does an enormous amount of outreach, but what you don't see, what the public may not see, is the 100 meetings or so that he has attended with staff members, not only from the city, but from the fire district and the hospital and the school district and other agencies, to keep things moving forward. And it's, again, my great honor to thank him and participate in honoring him this evening. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. There are some people in the audience that would like to say a few things. Roger Robertson, would you care to come up? You might as well just sit there, Doctor. This is kind of like a roast, I think.
Can I just sit here? Okay.
We got you.
Roger Robertson, 2617 Northeast Holmes Road, Lincoln City. I've had the good fortune to have known some people I consider to be brilliant, that have a wealth of knowledge that goes by far past their chosen profession. I've also had the good fortune to know some people that care deeply about their fellow human beings, who go way out of their way to ensure a degree of safety or comfort that they know others are deserving of. I've had the very good fortune to know one that truly possesses both enduring qualities. Dr. Sheraton Jones is a friend of mine, and more importantly, a friend of this community. He spent untold hours of time to bring a simple but life-saving and important message, not just to North Lincoln County and Lincoln City, but completely across the country. That message: you need to be prepared. I've heard that story, that song, that preacher for so long, and the message is loud and clear. Being prepared not just for the major problems that may befall a coastal community, like power outages, blocked roads, snow, but some of the more mundane things, like being stuck in traffic and needing facilities, like taking care of your pets, taking care of yourself. Dr. Jones shows up at neighborhood meetings to talk to people. If there's 100 or one person, doesn't make any difference, he'll come. He'll be there to present. Could be a fire station, community center, schools, service clubs, churches. All of the time, he's out there handing out information about being prepared and what you need to have in your to-go bag. I first had the good fortune to meet Dr. Jones when Joe Delavelle was doing the morning show on KBCH. He'd call in right after Paul Harvey News and comment. Then Dr. Jones would do his weather forecast, and then Joe would sing some stupid song after that, but we'll get past that. He keeps complete, accurate records of rainfall amounts on a daily basis, temperature readings, winds, not just for KBCH radio, but you read it in the News Guard and the Oregon Coast Today. And who do the Portland television stations contact when they need information about weather in Lincoln City? Dr. Sheridan Jones. He continues to do his Friday morning reports, complete with trivia, community events, and whatever he feels is relevant for the good of the community on that given weekend. If you've had an opportunity to read Pogo Nips, pick up a copy, co-authored by Wally Cole and Dr. Jones. It's a great read. It's fun and it's informative. If you've not had an opportunity to listen to one of his presentations, call him. Call City Hall. Dr. Jones is there. I consider it a great honor to have been asked to speak about a gentleman, a man who cares more about the world around him and the people that live in it than he cares about himself. I consider it even a greater honor to call Dr. Sheridan Jones friend.
Thank you, Roger. Carrie Grenshaw. Carrie?
I'm sorry, I have something to say on a totally different subject.
Okay.
Go on.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll come back. Yeah. Anyone else that didn't get an opportunity to sign up that wants to share with us your adventures with Dr. Jones?
I'm Sandy Gruber, and I work here at the city. When I arrived here 7 years ago, I had no experience with earthquake or tsunami preparedness, other than I lived through the small earthquake up in Seattle a few years ago. And Sheridan was one of the first people that I met in regards to emergency preparedness, because they were working on new tsunami inundation maps. And I stepped into it, had no clue what I was doing, didn't know what was right, what was wrong. And Sheridan guided me through how I was trying to make it better than the one before. And I appreciated that, but more than anything, I appreciated the way he spoke to me about preparedness, because now I do that. I pretty much bore my friends and family constantly about being prepared, and so far they're lackadaisical about it, but I'm buying kits for them slowly. But everybody I talk to now, I talk to them a little bit about preparedness. Don't be scared, just be a little bit prepared and you'll be okay. And it's all because of Sheridan and the things that he says that are emergency planning meetings, the things that we talk about when he's in my office, and I just really appreciate everything that he has done for me and for the city to make us more aware of what the dangers are out there. And now I believe, to honor what Sheridan has done over all these years, is that really the citizens of Lincoln City now need to take their step and get their emergency kits in their cars and in their homes, and they don't need to be monstrously big, but get started with something, and it's a nice way of honoring him.
Thank you, Sandy.
Mayor and City Council, I'm George Priest with the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. I've submitted some written comments, which I'll let you all read, and I gave a copy to Sheridan, so I know he's read those. What I'd like to say, though, is that my job with the Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral Industries was to try to get the coast prepared when we found out back in about 1989-90 that the coast was subject to really horrific tsunami hazards and, of course, a magnitude 9 earthquake hazard. The job was almost, it seemed like it was a task that I really didn't even conceive of, how to do. But what I discovered was that somehow emerging from certain key cities were what I called tsunami champions. And there's just a few of them along the coast, and Sheridan was one of the leaders, one of the early ones. And you're very fortunate to have him here, because it was in those communities where these champions arose, and there were just a few of them here and there, that leaped ahead of all of the other towns in getting prepared. And they also blazed the trail and actually taught us as a state agency how to proceed in many cases. And Sheridan was one of those trailblazers. And I really think you need to understand that he's not just a local champion or hero. He's a statewide champion. And we owe him a lot.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Lila Bradley, the Public Works Director, and I've been working with Sheridan for 20 years now. And we started the first tsunami brochure, and I believe that was the first one for the whole West Coast, and continued on with other brochures. And Sheridan has just been huge, working with Public Works, our street department, Tony Lewis, Jack Preston. He's the one that helped us with grants for all of our tsunami signs and placement of those, and he's just spent so much time with us, and it's been an honor to work with him.
Great.
Good evening. Excuse me. I'm Mark Nicholson. I'm the City Emergency Preparedness Coordinator. I worked with Sheridan for a number of years when I was in the Finance Department from 2002 to 2007, and sat in on his many emergency preparedness meetings, which are always enlightening. Now I have the honor of working very closely with him. And I can say in that capacity, there's no better mentor for this type of activity than someone that's been involved as long as Sheridan has and takes it so seriously. It's really been impressive. I guess the one thing I would like to add is Sheridan's not going anywhere. So we can all rest assured that he will continue to be involved. We just felt this was a good opportunity to honor him for his service. And I look forward to continuing to working with them, as I know all the other city staff do. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm Wally Cole. I've been here almost 20 years, but it seems like I've known Sheridan as a personal friend for 40 years. We met here doing weather stuff. We collaborated for 3+ years on a book, which he interrupted occasionally from his technical expertise because he wanted to get evacuation signs on all the streets. We were going to follow it with another book on our automobiles because that was our next thing. We'd barely settled on the title, Love in the Rumble Seat. we won't get that one done. But Sheridan is a strong technical expert and a great personal friend.
Oh, that's great. Good. And thank you for clarifying that Sheridan's not going anywhere. That was helpful. It seemed like that. Anyone else care to make comments? Because I think, Mark, you did an excellent job of reminding us all that Sheridan's still around and going to be around and assisting us all. I, too, have a story. It seems like only 4 years ago, right after being elected as mayor, before being sworn in, he was on the phone to me for a meeting and going to make sure that I knew everything he knew about tsunamis and earthquakes and anything of danger. And we met for a good hour and a half, 2 hours, and all he did was whet my appetite. You know, I got nothing retained based on his own knowledge. So it was fantastic, good introduction, and really appreciate all that you've done for the city and its citizens, Sheridan. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Lincoln City one of the first community on the coast to be named tsunami ready?
Lincoln County.
Lincoln County? Okay.
Seaside and Cannon Beach were first.
Really? That's disappointing to hear. Where were you? I'll continue to brag about it regardless. Who cares about facts?
Right,
so, but Sheridan, any comments or council? Anybody before we let Sheridan? What do you have for us, sir?
Well, I'm overwhelmed, and most people have never seen me speechless, but I'm close. All I can say is I greatly appreciate it. There's no other way to say it. I've been working not in a vacuum, but I've been working not to get any kind of rewards or anything, but because it was something I thought was necessary. And then to have something like this happen it's overwhelming. So all I can say is thanks. I've met a lot of wonderful people. I do intend to stay around and continue to meet other wonderful people and keep my contacts.
Good for you. I have a certificate suitable for framing, as long as you provide the frame.
I will be happy. I'll be happy to do that.
It's just our way of recognizing all that you've done for the city and its citizens and the surrounding area. Thank you, sir.
And I will put it in my weather station.
Thank you, Doctor, for all you've done. Gary, I'm going to step back because evidently I wrote down, to speak with Sheridan Jones, but if you still have public comment, let's go back and not overlook you.
That'll do fine.
Okay.
Off the cuff.
Well,
Particularly off the cuff.
could you up there?
Given the subject tonight and the company that around me, please would you give us people in the South a way to get out of the city? 101 will be flooded. Will be a series of islands. There's no way we can get out. What I really want to talk to you about is economics and the economic development of the direction of the city. Unavoidably, that's involved with some other subjects, but that's not the main thrust of my comments. in talking with Sheridan this evening, and Mick McLean, some of you may know, it seems that we have something about our hospital and its continuation and how it will continue. My association with the library has made me aware that the library desperately needs a new vehicle. We serve the outlying portions of Lincoln County and then some. Older people, remember, more than 50% of our county is over 50. Sorry, didn't mean that. The library needs to serve these people. They cannot get to the library by themselves. Somebody has to pay to help build or renovate the hospital and get new equipment and attract doctors. We currently do not have a geriatric specialist on the staff at the hospital. Somebody needs to help pay for a vehicle for the library. Now, people are writing grants and that sort of thing. My question for you and the rest of the audience to ponder is, where is this money going to come from? And I would suggest to you that that money is going to come from the 8,000 residents of Lincoln City. It is not going to come from people who come to us on weekends only and go back to their homes in suburbs and Portland and California and Washington. It's going to be us. We're the ones that are concerned. We're the ones that need the hospital. We're the ones that want to see that library books and discs and that sort of thing get to residents in the outlying rural areas that aren't able to get to the library. I've heard people say, well, what do I can't do anything about the empty houses, the second home, the VRD houses in the neighborhoods. That's not anything that's within my purview. Well, then it seems to me the question is, how does the city attract full-time homeowners so that we do have a population who will help to pay for things in the city, like increased taxes now and then, but particularly a hospital, which we all need, and cars for the library and other things. Who's going to pay for that? And I think it's obviously the permanent residents. So how do we attract and retain more? I'm not very good at that sort of thing, but we have people around who are. Maybe we could give them a month or 2 or 3 free water in the summer, anything to help attract. And maybe we could give them a way to circumvent the traffic on weekends and get out of the tsunami zones. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you. Hit some good points. All right. Let's go back, move ahead then to the consent agenda. And consent agenda calendar consists of items of a repeat or routine nature considered under a single action. A councilor may remove a consent agenda item for separate consideration upon request. Consent agenda consists of number 2, Resolution 2014-22, a resolution declaring Exhibit A as surplus property, providing for exemption from Lincoln City Municipal Code, Chapter 2.05, Public Contracts, Competitive Bid Procedures, and approving disposal by auction. And number 3, prepayment of 2007 water bonds.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second? We have a motion with a second to approve the consent agenda. Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull number 3 on the consent agenda.
Procedural. We've got to approve, a motion and a second to approve the entire consent agenda.
Yeah, the request to pull should have come first. I'd suggest that the person making the second withdraw the second, and then...
Well, or another, could we just have the discussion, because I think that's, since discussion before a vote?
You know, yeah, I guess I'd suggest that you withdraw the second and go back to before you had a motion.
We have a withdrawal of the second?
I'll withdraw the motion for now.
Okay. So, Chester, which one did you want pulled?
Number 3 on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Prepayment of 2007 water bonds.
Okay. So, let me go with the other. Then, anyone else?
Then I'll move that
entertain the motion?
I'll move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Consisting of number 2, the resolution.
Number 2, yes.
Yep. I'll second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with a nay? Hearing none. Let's go to the item 3, the prepayment of water bonds. Mr. Norikis?
I'd like to share with the public and the viewing audience a memo that we received from Mr. Ron Tierney, our financial planner, regarding partial prepayment of 2007 water bonds. Due to increased construction activity, e.g. apartments, goodwill, residential, etc., our Water SDC Improvement Fund has increased more than anticipated. These funds can only be spent on 1, expansion of the system, or 2, repayment of debt from a prior expansion of the system, i.e. 2007 Drift Creek Water Project. I recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager to prepay $80,000 of the 2007 water bonds due in fiscal year 2018-19, in addition to the September 1, 2014 quarterly payment. This will save the city approximately $15,000 in future interest payments, but more importantly, frees up cash flow needed for Phase 2 of our water improvement plan beginning in 2017-18. I anticipate future prepayments if construction continues to improve. And with that, I would move that we approve consent agenda item number 3.
Seconded.
We have a motion and second to approve the prepayment of 2007 water bonds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think we better have a
Call vote?
a roll call
Okay.
on that.
Kate, could you do that for us?
Sure. Norikis?
Yes.
Sprague?
Yes.
Quant?
Yes.
Eggleton? And Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. And going on to special order of business, item 4, this is a request for a designation of the Roads End Improvement Association as a neighborhood association.
Mayor and councilors, in 1991, the city adopted a citizen involvement program, and in 1994, the council adopted 11 standards for neighborhood associations because the citizen involvement program referred to neighborhood associations as the backbone of a successful citizen involvement program. As I said, there's 11 standards for neighborhood associations. In the case of the Roads End Improvement Association, almost all of them are met on the face of the application. I just want to point out that the boundaries are basically the area that was annexed for Roads End, and that is the area generally understood to be Roads End. The membership is actually higher than the number of residents there are in Rhodes End. According to Portland State, there's 361 residents in Rhodes End, and there's about 400 members of the neighborhood association. That is because there are absentee landowners who are members. Membership's open to any property owner or resident 18 years of age or over, and it's any property owner or resident, so the standard relating to non-discrimination is met. Meetings are appropriately publicized, and so on. There's really only a couple of areas where I think the application or the bylaws are a little bit deficient, and there's three of them actually. Two of them are quite minor. One is that the bylaws are supposed to contain a means for designating spokespeople, and also is supposed to contain a means for to maintain a current mailing address. Both of those things can be done very easily. It's basically adding about a sentence in each case to the bylaws. When I first read that requirement, I was thinking the bylaws had to designate a spokesman and had to have the address in it, and that's not really what it says. It has to have a means for doing those things. So as long as there's a way of doing it specified in the bylaws, then that would meet the requirement. Also, there's a requirement that the bylaws are to describe a means for resolving grievances concerning the activities, policies, or recommendations of the neighborhood association. And the Rhodes End bylaws do not contain a grievance procedure. Often, such a grievance procedure for organizations is not in the bylaws. It's in a procedures manual or something like that. But again, the resolution adopting the citizen involvement program says that it has to be in the bylaws, so I'll draw that to your attention. In all three of these cases, it's a fairly simple matter to amend the bylaw. It's simple in that it can be done. The writing can be done easily. The members have to adopt it by vote, and that can be more complicated. And of course, they have to pay the attorney to actually make the changes. But it's not hard to do in terms of drafting and so on. My recommendation is that you adopt a resolution approving the Rhodes End Improvement Association as a neighborhood association, subject to the provision that they amend the bylaws within a year to put in the missing items.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Any discussion from council?
Just
questions?
One question. In the discussions that we've had about what an association is, there's no definition of neighborhood association or what a neighborhood is.
Right.
Why don't we have one?
Because I don't have an answer for that. I think probably it's sort of we all know what a neighborhood is in a way, but then when you get down to is this a neighborhood or not, then it's I don't know. We probably don't because the issue never came up before. Like Portland has, I'm told, 96 neighborhood associations. We've got the Nelscott Neighborhood Association and a few others, but I guess there's never been a need, I guess. But short answer is I don't know why we don't have that.
Seems to me we ought to give that some thought.
Mr. Townsend, these three items on the bylaws suggest change. Have you had discussions with the Rhodes End amenable?
Well, when I had the discussion, it was in my my misapprehension of what the standard actually said, rather than saying that there has to be a means. I was thinking, well, they have to designate it. So we didn't discuss that per se, but again, if they're going to do one change, these others would be so minor, it'd be so easy to do. The grievance one is the biggest one that's missing.
Okay. Other questions from council? Great. Thank you, sir. Why don't you stay there and talk to us about number 5 is the request for designation by the Devils Lake Neighborhood Association as a neighborhood association.
I won't go through my introduction and background on neighborhood associations, but Mr. Sprague's question of what is a neighborhood is one of the principal concerns I had in evaluating their request to be designated as a neighborhood association. I did meet with representatives from them, and we discussed possible changes to the boundaries. They did change the area to remove areas south of Southeast 3rd Street and north of Northeast 6th, some distance from the lake. They did, and also added the east side of East Devils Lake Road out to the urban growth boundary. I think you have both of the maps in your packet. Regarding whether there could be other neighborhood associations in the area, the city attorney has pointed out to me that what it says is there should not be other neighborhood associations within the boundaries of the proposed neighborhood association. It doesn't say there can't be; it just says there shouldn't be, and so presumably there could be if the council thought it was appropriate to designate or to recognize other neighborhood associations. The Devils Lake Neighborhood Association people have offered to change some language that they would not object unreasonably or something. I would suggest if you do go forward with it, that maybe that they stipulate that there can be, just period. Again, because it takes in such a large area, it's just about a third of the city and the urban growth boundary. Where there be something that's more focused, it shouldn't be precluded from existing. Another concern I had was about membership. The bylaws specify that membership is open to any resident, property owner, business, and so on within the boundaries. But there's no way of saying who's a member and who's not. In other words, there's no affirmative step somebody takes to become a member. When I raised this, they said that everybody within the boundary was a member when we first talked to them about it. And in the last communication I got, which you have in your packet, it said that there's, I think, 300 and some people who have requested to get their email newsletter, and that those people are considered to be members. That may be the case, but again, there's nothing specified in the bylaws about any affirmative action anybody takes to become a member, any affirmative step someone takes. And that's, I still have reservations about that, but I want to draw that to your attention. I also had mentioned concern about well-publicized meetings. When we're first evaluating this, they publicize meetings only on the website, but since probably the vast majority of people within the boundaries don't know that the organization exists or that there's a website, just having that be where the meetings are publicized, to me didn't meet the standard of being well publicized. Since then, in their comments, they're proposing annual mailings to coincide with a meeting announcement for their required annual meeting using Facebook. Said they could publish announcements in the News Guard if they're recognized as a neighborhood association. Propose to use Channel 4, the government channel, for publicizing their meetings, and possibly having signage on East Devils Lake and West Devils Lake roads. Certainly, that's an improvement, and it's your call whether that is sufficient or not to amount to well-publicized meetings. I'm not sure that Channel 4 is available, but other things are possibilities. Another concern was about the required to have an organizational structure that would ensure that the recommendations coming from the neighborhood association represent actually what the neighborhood wants and not just the board of directors. They responded to that by talking about the publicity for the meetings and so on, as I just described, and also talked about possibly expanding the board to include more members and presumably taking more geographically diverse members of the board of directors. Of course, that just makes the board of directors bigger, but doesn't really talk about the will of the members. It's just more people who are the board of directors, and the standard is supposed to be not just the board of directors. The standards relating to means of designating spokespeople, they're proposing a change to the bylaws that would accomplish that appropriately and adequately. The other standard about maintaining the current mailing address, a means of maintaining current mailing address, there was nothing in any of the materials about that. And as with the the Roads End Improvement Association, I've suggested that these things can be added later and subject to a condition. Grievance procedure, as it originally was set up, there would be a grievance committee of a board member, someone appointed by the board, and someone appointed by the person doing the grievance. I raised the concern that that's weighted against anybody with a grievance, and they have changed that at my suggestion to someone appointed by the board, someone appointed by the person with a grievance, and someone mutually agreed on. It's still, the board still makes the final decision, not the grievance committee, on whether the grievance is well-founded or not. And question whether, in my mind, whether the board, which will probably be the ones accused of doing something wrong or being, in which there was a concern about, would be the appropriate body to have the final decision rather than the grievance committee. And let's see. It did propose a change. I think that it needs modification about just what you can grieve, or it still requires personal harm rather than just someone who thinks that the board has done something wrong, or that the neighborhood association has done something wrong in their actions or activities or recommendations and so on. And I think requiring personal harm might be too narrow an approach. But most of these things can be addressed with further changes to the bylaws. The big concerns still are what's a member, in my mind, and as Mr. Sprague brought up, what's a neighborhood too. I think the changes they've made, particularly the changes that take out a couple of areas, are improvements. Whether they've gone far enough, it's your call.
So you've, since our last council meeting where this topic was withdrawn, you've met
Yes.
with them, and so I guess my sense is it still feels a bit premature. You've had discussion, but is it, and the recommendation certainly was some bylaw changes that were suggested. I guess I'm a little concerned just raising the question of, how council would proceed with, theoretically approving subject to these and other bylaw changes seems a little bit nebulous yet. And premature. Is there still time, or, would there be some time well spent to keep working with the organization to refine some of these suggested changes?
Sure, I think the more we can be focused down and be more plainly compliant, I think that, if we can accomplish that, that would be worthwhile.
I noted in one of the earlier public comments of just raising a concern of mailings, implying that the city would have to mail to all the members of a neighborhood association. We don't do that now.
No, what we do, we inform the neighborhood association, and the neighborhood association then informs its members.
Okay, so I want to, thus the mailing address of the association, I guess, was, okay. Other councilors, questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the fact that we're talking about a Lincoln City Neighborhood Association, and we're talking also about incorporating into that property that's outside the Lincoln City boundaries, including the urban growth, up to the urban growth boundary. And that just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry, but if we're going to have an association in Lincoln City, I think it only needs to have people that reside inside Lincoln City.
Well, the citizen involvement program does include people in the urban growth boundary, and specifically authorizes neighborhood associations that cross the city boundary but are within the urban growth boundary.
Well, the size of this thing, to me, is unmanageable. I just think that something that stretches clear around a lake that doesn't sound like a neighborhood to me. I'm just not comfortable with it.
Other questions from council? Chester?
I have feelings similar to Mr. Sprague. This, even though we don't have a definition for a neighborhood, quote unquote, this to me is way too large an area for me to consider it a neighborhood. Again, that's totally subjective. I would also like to point out, I'm looking at Mr. Mitchell's letter to you, Mr. Townsend, July 30th. He's in number 8. In the proposed changes of bylaws. Number 8 talks about the DLNA bylaws have been modified to modify the grievance procedure, and yet in the bylaws on page 10, grievance resolution, again, we've got the Board of Directors rendering final decisions as opposed to the Grievance Committee. Point that out to Mr. Mitchell. So on page 9, at the bottom of the page, Article 9, number 2, grievance limitations. Grievances are limited to complaints that the grievant has been harmed by activities, policies, or recommendations. And in the bylaws, I believe it says "and recommendations." So I would suggest that we get that straightened out as well. And Mr. Townsend, given the new map, has that changed the number of citizens involved and the number of properties involved?
Yes, it has. I haven't had a chance to actually to analyze that, because actually figuring out the number of people involved is not a trivial matter.
Right.
And 'cause it was getting the census data, and if you've ever tried to use the census website, it's not the simplest thing in the world. And the person in my office who was doing that in the past, and did it in this case in my original analysis, was out most of last week, so I wasn't able to have him work on that.
Well, in your last, not in your last one, but in your memorandum, July 14, 2014, according to the census, the area within the boundaries of the proposed neighborhood association has 2,249 housing units and a population of 3,356 persons, or about 35% of the population of the entire UGB, approximately 9,500. And once again, that's stretching my concept of neighborhood.
Yeah. I will say that with the changes that in the boundaries that they've proposed, I'm sure that the number of housing units and the number of people has decreased to some extent.
Thank you.
Mr. Townsend, again, I think all these points are good points and relative, but getting back to the purpose of a neighborhood association, and I understand, a group of people and input to this body representing a certain area of the community. But I don't sense that, this council or any other council is giving up any of their authority to that body.
No, the body doesn't have any authority. That's right. The main thing they get out of being designated is they get on our mailing list. That's what it comes down to.
And so, and I'm sorry for flipping around, but, the earlier comment from in Rhodes End, where the Rhodes End property owners clearly stated they were not opposed to the REIA being appointed, because they were a separate group working on some other things. And I could envision them still coming to council, representing 70 people or 30 people and, whatever little club, organization, whatever they have, and would still be meaningful because they've taken the time to, I'll assume, study an issue, gather people, talk about it, and come to the body, even without a neighborhood association. So, I'm wondering why we care. And care doesn't sound like the right word, but in fact, are we asking groups to jump some hoops that we're not giving them authority, that we're not giving up anything. They should be applauded for gathering people and be willing to come to council, in this case, and talking about the issues. It's our job to figure out who they represent and weed through the discussion item. So I'm wondering out loud, so it'd be, in this case, it'd be easy to send Devils Lake back to the drawing board and say, work on a whole bunch of more stuff, as you've pointed out, and probably for their own benefit they should. But at the end of the day, do we really care, or is it going to make a difference? I'm looking for help and direction in this as I raise the question. And council.
I'm looking over at the city attorney. That's what I'm looking at. Just,
I'm looking at council, this council.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, just.
I have a concern like Mr. Green had a concern regarding the veto ability of this proposed neighborhood association. And Mr. Mitchell proposes stipulation that would modify the provision, but even so, that modification says the boundary should not overlap those of any other neighborhood association unless the neighborhood association affected agrees in writing such requests shall not unreasonably be denied. And it's up to the association to decide what's reasonable and what's not, and I don't think that's fair.
Okay. And
Mr. Mayor, when I look at that map, I see what looks to me like 3 logical neighborhood associations rather than one huge neighborhood association. Somebody around a regatta grounds really doesn't have a connection with somebody in Neatsu, as far as a neighborhood is concerned. That's just the way I look at it. Now, maybe I have a wrong interpretation of a neighborhood, but that just doesn't seem comfortable for me, and it would seem to me that if we can condense this a little bit more, maybe if they want to have 3 neighborhood associations, but I'm not comfortable with the east side of the lake versus, or with the west side. It just doesn't fit for me.
Mr. Epicello, you wanted to offer any clarity for us?
Well, I don't know it's so much the definition of a neighborhood, but what we are talking about is the boundaries. And under the standards, and this is adopted through your citizen involvement program, it's the boundaries of the association. They must specifically define an area of appropriate geographic size and population, never less than 50 households. So you got a bottom on there in terms of 50. And the boundaries shall take into account natural boundaries, commercial patterns, and historic factors. So certainly it's not just the word neighborhood. You have some guidelines here, some definitional guidance for what the appropriate boundaries should be. And the kind of things you're talking about, Neatsu being different than, the park area or the D River area, certainly are things that you can legitimately take into account in deciding that the boundaries are appropriate or are not appropriate. In terms of does it matter, well, we are talking about citizen involvement and citizens getting notice to a representative association. Again, all the people in the association are not going to get individual notices, so it's just the association that gets notice. And so you'll have someone from the association appear and say, we represent all these people, and so that you could have more citizen involvement, but if it's not accurate, you could have, in a sense, less. Now, there are some things that have occurred in Oregon law since this was created, and that's the Measure 56 notice that we're required to give when we do a new land use regulation that may affect your property. We send out individual notices to all property owners, and it doesn't matter if you're in an association. So if there was a so what kind of argument here, it's that other changes in Oregon law have kind of made this less important. But you still have adopted these standards, and they ask you to look at the boundaries of the proposed neighborhood and determine if it's appropriate in geographical size and population. And I hear some concern about the size of this. That was the same concern that was raised before. And I don't know that you're ready to give direction to staff here yet, but if you do, we'll come back and give everybody one last chance to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. So, council, this is we don't have a resolution. We weren't planning on, this was intended to be discussion and see where you wanted to go from here and give direction to staff. What would that direction be?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I would suggest that we postpone this to a future date, and that the association requesting this would maybe come back with some more suggestions.
So how about, rather than postponing it, just give it back and say, we're not interested at this time.
That's fine.
Okay, and work needs to be done. The association or group has heard comments, discussion, when they're in a better position to meet some of our concerns, get back on the agenda.
I think that works.
So I want to clarify that you're not denying the request at this point. You're just kicking it back to them and asking them if they want to come back as is, if they want to work with staff, we're willing to sit down and talk to them.
Yes. Is that, Mr. Norikis, you're right, and Council?
Thank you.
If you'd continue to work, if they're interested with them, Mr. Townsend, we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you. We have, next agenda item is a discussion item. Again, one of those topics I think came from last meeting, mandatory trash.
Mayor, we do have a requirement for mandatory trash service, but there's an out provided for, that somebody can get out of the requirement if they have an alternate means. And there's really 3 different ways of doing that. And for those that want to look up the requirement, it's in our municipal code 8.16.110, and we don't really have a full subscription of mandatory trash customers. Of the of single-family residents we have, and to some extent that's a little bit of a misnomer. There's about 1,730 accounts of the single-family housing units that don't have trash service. Now, if you look at our housing, and unfortunately I don't have it broken down by single-family only, but our total housing, 6,025 housing units, of which 39, almost 40%, are vacant or seasonal, mostly seasonal. Of those, there's about 700 that are VRDs, and they are required to have trash service, and that, I believe, is pretty strictly enforced. So there's about 30% of the total number of housing units that are seasonal housing units that arguably may not really need to have trash service on a regular basis. There's a couple of reasons why I think that we want to consider some level of mandatory service. Obviously, probably the health and safety and appearance of the community are maybe the most important reason. There's also a couple of other issues, and we've seen over time a drastic increase in the amount of product stewardship that the North Lincoln Sanitary has to take care of: computers, paint, all kinds of things. Some have charges, but a lot of them don't. There's a recycling center that they run that, in my impression at least, is mostly used by people that don't have trash service. It's used by the whole North County. And all the customers of North Lincoln Sanitary pay for that. And that people who are not customers don't pay a penny towards that. And then finally, there's the economy of scale. The more customers in a neighborhood, the more efficient it is to pick up the trash. So we can enforce in a couple different ways. And we haven't done a lot of enforcement because it's very difficult. First of all, our 2 computer programs don't line up. For example, and this is just an example, we may have a neighborhood or a complex served on a single water meter where they have individual trash service. So right there, we don't match up, or vice versa. And so it's kind of a painful process to go through. If the other thing we can do, of course, and will do, is if we see trash accumulations at a property, we can check to see if they have either an affidavit on file that exempts them from trash service or require them to get trash service. So that solves some of the problem. It may not solve the improper, illegal use of dumpsters or neighbors' backyards or open spaces or whatever, but it would solve the problem at that property. As far as a universal enforcement action, the ordinance allows us to shut off water for lack of trash service. I'm a little reluctant to enforce shutting off 1,700 housing units of water. We can write citations. We could go through annually and check to see if this customer has trash service, and if they don't have an affidavit, we could issue a citation. Before and now it's getting closer to possible with the computer sophistications that we do have to actually enforce this ordinance in a more aggressive way. I don't want to do that without knowing from council that we're on the right track. And I'm very reluctant to see that kind of universal enforcement without having a real serious discussion about this issue. Along with that, I've suggested an option to what we currently have now, and that's require that all customers using a certain amount of water in a year, and only do this annually, certain amount of water consumption in a year, subscribe to some level of service, and that could just be the standby service that North Lincoln Sanitary is now offering, meaning that they're now contributing to the welfare of the whole, and the individual customers who are subscribing to regular service aren't subsidizing all those efforts. So I think that would be a very useful way of looking at this, and it could be easily phased in over time with, if you use 15,000 gallons in the last year, you have to have trash service in the next year, for example, something like that, and 10,000 gallons in the future, perhaps, or 5,000. So I think the first question to ask is, do you want to have mandatory trash service? And if so, what does that look like? And thirdly, how is it enforced? I don't expect council to give that kind of direction tonight, but I thought we ought to bring it on the table. I've asked North Lincoln Sanitary to be here this evening, and they are, and you can call on them for questions or discussion. But maybe just have an initial discussion tonight, see what additional information you might like to have on this. I do think it's a serious issue and deserves some serious thought.
Agreed. And thank you for bringing it back as promptly.
And I apologize that the memo did not get in the packet. It was done last Wednesday. I can email it to anybody who wants that memo. Just email me or the city recorder. I'm davidh@lincolncity.org.
Or it might be something just put up on the website, the cover? Or
sure.
Is that,
yes.
They could click and...
We'll do that.
Yeah, that might. Council, discussion, questions? Do you want to bring Tina French up? Do you have something you want to visit on? Tina, would you mind coming up? No PowerPoint, so is Lonnie, Lonnie standing by? Okay.
Stand by, Lonnie.
Yeah.
I'm Tina French, president of North Lincoln Sanitary, and hopefully I can answer any questions you have or prompt more discussion.
Well, I think part of this, when you made your presentation last council meeting, and when I visit with citizens of Lincoln City, the mandatory issue is what is kind of the gripe. Mandatory and then not enforced. And so, I guess the first thing I'd put on the table, does it need to be at all? Because I don't know what prompted the mandatory, but I can imagine some issues. The other thing I'm reminded about, so help me, is the people that use the recycling center, and I'm one of those because that's where my glass goes.
Correct.
and I do see all the other bins and, stuff that people use, but we're labeling other non-subscribers, of which I am a subscriber, are dropping stuff off, but they seem to be responsible because they are dropping things off.
Sure.
So I like to think that if they're responsible enough to drop off their glass or other things, I'm betting they're taking care of their garbage as well. So should I be concerned about, any level of subsidy on that? Can you help me?
It's a good question and a good, and I can't answer it.
Okay.
I mean, we could start polling people that come through the recycling center, which we have done, like at our household hazardous waste events. We actually have a little questionnaire of, where did this stuff come from? How did you hear it? Blah, blah, blah. I'm really interested to see who uses our recycling center, and the volumes and the number of cars that go through there is fascinating to me, because I'm thinking, why on earth would somebody want to make another stop during their day if they don't have to? And I understand the glass is an issue, and that is definitely something that we would like to change. But I'm not sure that, I'm not sure your answer. If the people that are coming in there are possibly live in an apartment that doesn't provide recycling service, or some other multifamily housing that doesn't provide recycling service, are they visitors? Are they just dropping their glass off because they want their glass recycled and we don't pick it up curbside? I don't know. I do know that, there is an expense to run that, and David was asking me about the number I gave him, the 113,000, and I just want to clarify that I did not feel that it was right to put 100% of the expense of having that building there in this memo, because the baler that is in that building, we use to bale the cardboard that we pick up from our commercial customers. And the trucks that we use to haul those commodities that are collected in the recycling center are the same trucks that we use to haul what we collect from our residential and commercial customers. So I took a percentage of what the tonnage is that comes out of the recycling center and charged that number for the purpose of this memo. Obviously, to have that building, trucks, employees, equipment is much more expensive than 113,000, but I tried to ration it out to, okay, if this building wasn't here and we were not collecting the tons in this building, what would we save? So that's why I did that. I'm not sure that not sure where their garbage goes, if they subscribe to service or not. There's absolutely, other than taking a poll, there's really no way of knowing. I do know that, it seems pretty apparent that there's about 400 customers out there that do not have exemptions and are using full-time water. Of where is their stuff going? And, if they have a business, they can have an exemption. So if I have a dumpster at my office, and I go there every day, obviously that's going to make more sense. But the question is, 400 is quite a few. We're a small community and a small company, and we only have about 3,500 customers. So if you look at that on a percentage basis, it's a significant number of people, and they have access to all the services that the ratepayers do.
I guess the other thing, and as I'm remembering you telling me or heard, was when this was done, the standby service really didn't
Sure.
exist. So you've been bringing that on and picking up.
So that was a new rate that I asked you to approve when I was here last, and that's something we've never done in Lincoln City before, and we've asked the county to change the rate as well, to have a flat fee to help cover the costs of the very things that we were just talking about. And so in the past, you could have on-call service and never have a pickup, but have 2 roll carts in front of your house, be in our system, we maintain your account, and it could never cost you a dime, even though there's capital out there. You could still come in and use the services. And now we're asking for the $5 flat fee per month to be an on-call customer. We call them standby on-call. an on-call customer, and that gets you a garbage can and a recycling can, and then if you want one pickup a month or 6 pickups a year, that's your choice, and you would pay for those pickup individually.
And what would you pay for those individual pickups, Tina?
Well, we're offering all 3 sizes of roll carts, and so I apologize, Chester, I do not know. They're in the rates that I gave you at the last meeting.
It would depend on the size of the cart.
It would depend on the size of the cart, yes. I believe for a 32-gallon, it's around $7.
Other questions?
Comment. I was on the council when this mandatory ordinance was passed, and if I remember right, it was at the old city hall down there in Taft, was it not?
1987.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Anyway, it was a contentious
We were
time.
against it.
Pardon?
Our company was not for the mandatory garbage service.
I know that. But at the time, we had some serious problems with trash in Lincoln City.
We did.
And that was the reason that was passed. And we found that by passing that our trash problems were reduced. And I think I would feel comfortable if every residence in Lincoln City had mandatory trash pickup.
Of some level.
Some sort.
Of some level.
Now that there's another very minimum level,
Right.
or on-call standby.
And I think that's
much
fine.
more, take some of the bite out of
Yep.
those who don't collect or create a lot of trash.
And there are customers, I mean, I have lots of customers that abided by the every other week service. When I say lots, maybe a dozen, but sweet lady, widow ladies that wrap their trash in little blocks and put it in their can for their every other week. And, there may be 2 little brown paper bags that they've wrapped neatly and frozen for trash day. So there are people out there that just don't create enough garbage for a pickup every other week in a 32-gallon can, with recycling on top of that as well. Unfortunately, the way the system in the state is that you have to have garbage service to have recycle service, because the cost of recycling, and I know that we all know this, but recycling's not free, but unfortunately, all of that cost is embedded in the garbage can. And so there are lots of people out there that would probably love to just have recycling pickup and not have garbage pickup, because I don't know what they do with their garbage, because generally everybody creates some garbage. But
Other questions, Chester?
Why were you against the mandatory legislation earlier?
Well, to clarify, I was a junior in high school. Not to make Roger out to be here for a while, but I was, I remember my dad at the time, he was not for it, because even back at that time, we had a lot of non-occupied residences, recreational residences, and my dad was on city council previous to that, and so he understood some of the economic struggles that people had, and just having that, hearing both sides of the story, he just thought it was best. He tried to stay neutral on it, but that wasn't really possible at the end of the day, and so he did come out and say, no, we did not bring it forward. It was not us. But we also realized, and I remember this very well, on any given Sunday, Dee River Wayside was a mountain of garbage out, because they had a dumpster there in the middle of the wayside. Van Duzer State Parks, you could not see the dumpsters, because everybody that left town took their garbage and just dropped it off wherever it was convenient. And we still have that to this day. I have customers, not all of our customers, lots of our customers behind the Safeway, Rite Aid, Joann's complex have a really hard time with people going back there and using their dumpsters. And we started making locking dumpsters for a lot of our customers in the past 5 years, so that's an option for them, but it's also annoying.
One more observation. It strikes me that we're talking about mandatory service in terms of fairness, in terms of part of the city not subsidizing another part of the city, and that's mandatory service is the only way to guarantee that fair distribution. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think a great analogy is city water and sewer. Regardless, if I ever come down to my house in Lincoln City and ever turn on my faucet, I'm paying a minimum rate to have the convenience of being able to turn on my water or flush my toilet, and I think that's fair. I think that allowing the on-call instead of the current ordinance, just so everybody knows, we have a current mandatory garbage ordinance that says a minimum of every other week service, and then we allow these exemptions. But I think if we change the ordinance to say that, I like David's thing of phasing it in. There's more and more cities. I get probably an email every other month from other cities that, hey, I hear your city has mandatory garbage. Tell me how it works. How do you feel about it? So I think it's one of those things because the solid waste world is changing, and as we add more and more commodities to product stewardship programs and so on and so forth, so there has to be a way to collect that, and unless it's through the property taxes, which some cities do that your solid waste is collected right with your water bill or your property taxes or whatever. Oregon is not real saturated with that plan, but other states are, where you just contract with a hauler and everybody gets a can and the city writes a check. And that's on their water bill or their property tax bill. I'm not a fan of that because I like having the contact with my customers.
And do you agree with Mr. Hawker that water service would be a good standard by which to judge?
I think it's a great, David can tell you that pretty much every single year when I have sat down with him to talk about trash, I bring that up to him we can figure out who's actually here, and a lot of the time or most of the time by our water usage. And I think that was the intent back in 1987 when that was the hammer of we could look at what water usage was and see who was here and who wasn't here.
But we don't have that particular standard in the ordinance. If we had that standard in the ordinance, there was a on-call service charge. I think this would be relatively painless if that standard were not too low. If that threshold of how much water did you use was high enough.
Right.
To me, that makes it fair. That means that you're here a lot. And if you're here a lot, I think you ought to contribute to this issue.
I would agree. I, for one, have an exemption. I compost my garbage, and I collect my trash in a can, and then I carry it down to your facility and pay $5 a can to dump it. And I'd be happy to pay $5 a month whether I have you pick up my trash or not, in the name of fairness, in the name of not having somebody else subsidize the service for me.
Any other comments, thoughts? Thank you, Tina, for
Thank you.
answering
Feel
questions.
free to call
and
me
thoughts.
anytime if something strikes you in the middle of the night. Have a great night.
Something about trash is what you, okay. So, council direction to staff, Mr. Hawker, maybe flesh out a little better the standby suggestion that he's made, and personally, I'm interested in that. I like it. I think it's a nice option.
Me too.
And
I could certainly come back with some statistical analysis of our water customers to see what kind of thresholds might make sense, and give you some customer counts there.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think it's something worth.
And now that it's out here in the public, maybe we can hear from some of the public.
Right.
Does your neighborhood have a problem with accumulations of trash or dumping? Or is your business getting inundated by people using your dumpster? Do you really feel that you don't need trash? Or, I mean, whatever the public has to say on this issue, it would be nice to hear.
It would, yeah. Good.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I can tell you that for our church, we have a dumpster, and on weekends, after we were through we would find that it would be piled high and the lid up, and you couldn't close it. So we finally had to have the sanitary service put a lock on it for us.
Yeah, and sometimes you find that the trash that would have been in the dumpster sitting beside the dumpster.
It's true, but it did seem to help that by getting the lock on it. But that's one of the problems that we've had for a long time.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mayor.
sir. If we could move on then to next item, Schooner Creek Water Transmission Main Award bid. Stephanie.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight, we're asking for a construction bid award, and the project is the Schooner Creek Transmission Main Boring. It's a replacement line for the transmission main right as it leaves the water treatment plant. Especially exacerbated by the 2011 flooding event, our pipe that was buried 5 feet below the stream bed in '83 had become exposed and was actually, as you maybe have seen pictures, it was the whole casing, the concrete casing is very visible, and it looks like a little dam or bridge, kind of across the creek there. So we were fortunate to be eligible for FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency funding, to replace that line. And so over a couple years, we've done geotechnical investigation, a lot of design work, a lot of alternative analysis. And on July 31st, we did open bids for the project, the construction. We received 3 bids. The lowest bidder was Enterprises Northwest, Inc., doing business as Earthworks Excavation. The bid amount was $559,256. The second low bidder was K&E Excavation, Inc. Bid amount $844,890. And third, Armadillo Boring, Inc., $884,620. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Earthworks Excavating, Inc., in the amount of $559,256. Now, when you get a bids that are, the difference between the lowest and the next low was about $285,000. You ask the question why. We asked the question why. The contractor themselves did. The contractor's bonding company. I have had conversations with the contractor. First, they felt comfortable enough with the bid opening. They had the option to not turn in their first tier, so they had 2 hours to decide whether or not to submit the bid formally, and they did. Subsequently, they've had conversations with their own bonding company asking, okay, what was the difference in the bids, and was there a risk that you didn't identify? Was there a problem with the bid itself? So what happens is when we open these bids, we read and look at the total bid, but in fact, in this case, there were 16 bid items. So the contractor is able to compare the bid items from these other 2 bidders to their own bid, as well as I broke down the engineer's estimate to those, what was, in those 16 items, and gave that information to the contractor so he could make a decision and really understand why his bid was that much lower. So he talked to his subs. The 2 major risk factors are the water dewatering. It's a deep pit. It's about 25 feet deep, and the key is to get the water controlled so you can get your equipment down there and do the boring and construction in the pits. He talked to his boring contractor, his sub. He talked to his dewatering sub, and they looked at the geotech report. We had extensive water analysis. We estimated the flows that will be coming into the pit, and they felt comfortable with honoring this bid, and their subs did, his bonding company, contractor's bonding company, and so the contractor's said pretty comfortable with honoring this bid. So the other issue with this is that for the total, our total estimate for construction was, and what was budgeted, was $515,037. That was for this fiscal year, what the city had budgeted. That would include the reimbursement from FEMA. And in fact, the revised amount after this bid and the construction engineering and the contingency is $615,778.80. So we are asking currently, we're in the process, we've discussed this verbally with FEMA, but we're formally requesting an increase in the funds to cover that difference. And the city's share, the difference is $25,772, but the city's total share based on the bid is $153,944.70. And that would come out of the water bond construction contingency, or water bond construction fund. So I guess Ron finds us money and we find a way to gobble it up quick as we can. But anyway, that was unanticipated, but I think this bid is a good bid, and I think the design, we worked really hard on the design, and it's a good design, so we're recommending that council move forward. And although we have issued a notice of intent to award to all three bidders to get the protest period started, we haven't heard from the other two bidders on any indication that there'll be a protest. The deadline for that protest is up on the 12th, tomorrow. So barring any protests, staff is recommending the construction contract be awarded to Enterprise Northwest, Inc., doing business as Earthworks Excavating, Inc., in the amount of $559,256, with a construction contingency, what FEMA recommends, of 5% of the bid, $27,962.80.
So, Stephanie, Roger?
I have a question about the memo that you gave us. Asks us to approve the bid of $559,256, but the total cost of this thing is $615,000. Is this company that is the low bidder going to be doing the construction management and the other things, or not?
No, and we did come last council meeting. We asked for the construction and management. That was the project we asked for, engineering services, construction management and engineering services for PBS of $28,000. So I included that in the cost because it is our fiscal year cost to do the construction, but you guys have already approved that. Okay. And then the other difference is the contingency, the 5% contingency. So I just tried to lump all the construction costs together, but the bid is the bid.
So we just approve the bid, and then if there is a contingency, then that's when we approve that later, or?
I would ask that you approve the bid and the contingency, a 5% contingency. You do want some flexibility during construction to be able to make some, approve some changes if necessary. Given this tight timeline, this type of construction is going to be under, if it's a large amount over that, we would be something substantial enough that we would come back to council and ask for more contingency. Hopefully that won't happen.
Okay.
Stephanie, I know you implied it, but I just want to, for public purposes, this is our main water line going from the plant across Schooner Creek. Used to be buried, it's now exposed. Nothing wrong with that except for the fact that stuff comes down Schooner Creek and is bound to run into that pipe.
True, that's the vulnerability.
Right.
It's solid in a concrete casing. Where we are worried that some debris can come down the creek, or, you know, you don't want your main transmission. You really don't like any pipes exposed. Sometimes on bridges and whatnot, you can have them exposed, but in this case, it wasn't designed to be exposed, and so it's vulnerable.
So, and this, your recommendation, is that subject to FEMA increasing sending you an increase in their allotment? Or what happens if FEMA says, no, thank you?
We're going to pay for it.
Okay, so not subject to.
And let me add just one more reason on this. If a transmission main fails where we can get to it, we're going to fix it. We're going to have the cities keeping water. If this fails, and we can't get a permit to lay it in the creek, which I doubt if we could, we're talking about a boring job, and the city will be out of water until that happens. So it's not just that there is some vulnerability here, it's that we can't repair it in the stream. If this scours during another major storm and scours underneath and we lose that main, we have a big, serious problem. But I think if we can't get the extra money from FEMA, they're paying so much of it anyway, we dig into our construction funds, even if it means compromising some other project.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, Gordy? Into the mic, will you?
You're using ductile iron pipe in there.
Well, ductile iron is the material that the rest of our transmission main is constructed from. So it's actually nice that we can use ductile to ductile. We're putting a casing, it's a sleeve, and we'll slide the ductile into that casing. So that is our go-to standard for large pipe. For our large transmission, it's ductile. For the smaller transmission, it's PVC, yeah. Well, you can use, we also had an alternative for polyethylene. We looked at that. So there's different pipe materials you can use. But again, for the large, for our 24-inch main, it's almost all ductile. Yeah.
And the casing, Stephanie, is iron?
Yes.
Other questions?
Yes, sir. Do you know who the bonding company is that they were going to use?
Oh, they turned in their bid bond. I'm sorry, Mr. Sprague, I didn't bring that with me. They're pretty. I do know that this bonding company bonds a lot of other contractors in Oregon. They're big. They have substantial clients, and that's just from what the contractor told me today in his discussions with this bonding company. But I could get that information from you if you're interested, for sure.
But they've got, what we are going to get as a bid bond, or what we get as a bid bond, but I'm talking about bonding the project now.
It's the same, yeah. Their bid bond was issued by the same company as their bonding, their performance bond.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
They don't issue the performance bond until they sign the contract.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that this company's got the assets. There have been some bonding companies that have failed, and I just, with a low bid like we've got, which is almost 300,000 lower than the other two bidders, I have a little concern, and I want to make sure that we're well taken care of.
We don't do a due diligence on the bonding companies. That's a good point. Depend on the system to only, to make sure that those companies can handle what they're insuring.
Isn't that a state-regulated business?
Well, yeah, it is. But on the other hand, if they're not operating efficiently, and they're bonding projects that are failing, they go broke, and I've seen it happen. I just don't want to be the one who has to fight with the bankruptcy court to try to get our money.
Mr. Sprague, what would you do to alleviate that danger, that risk?
Make sure that the company is a AAA company, one of the highest rated bonding companies.
Are we able to determine that, Mr. Hawker?
The insurance commissioner's office can sure tell you.
Okay. I guess we can.
I would ask the council to direct staff to do that.
Yep.
Okay. Can do that.
Okay.
And Mr. Hawker, could you paraphrase Stephanie's explanation of the $290,000 difference on these bids? I mean, that seems extraordinary.
Well, it's a unique type of work. It's not something that is common, and particularly the way this is going to be done, it's not every contractor that's done a lot of this, and so I think you can expect to see, I mean, when you're talking about tons of asphalt, I mean, people know what tons of asphalt go for, and linear feet of 12-inch water pipe, you know what that's going to cost. But this is kind of a unique situation, and everybody's going to look at this a little bit differently, and that's all I can say. I mean,
You have no reservations?
It's very close to our estimate. It's very close to our estimate. That's why I don't have particular reservations. And a lot of companies will bid projects saying, hey, I don't know if I really want that project, but if I get it, I want to make some money on it. You only have two other bidders. No, I mean, if it was way under our estimate, I'd be a little more concerned.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none. Then I'd entertain a motion. Let me, I'd see would recommend that the council approve a motion, or make a motion that, let's see, intent to award to Enterprises Northwest Incorporated, DBD Earthworks Excavating in the amount of $559,256, and include the amount construction contingency of $27,962.80.
So moved, Your Honor.
This being subject to expiration of the protest period.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
For Chester and Henry. Roll call, please.
Sprague,
Yes.
Norikis,
Yes.
Eggleton,
Yes.
Quant,
Yes.
or Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item is, let's see, water treatment
Mr.
plant.
Mayor?
Yes.
Excuse me, getting back to the thing we just did, once that new stuff is in, what happens to the existing? Is that going to be torn out?
We don't have plans to demo the existing yet. We're not sure what we're going to do.
So it just acts like a dam there then for a while? Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
I neglected to include in my motion the...
Oh, subject to bonding.
Yes.
Carrying a AAA rating.
The discussion was that we need to check. The discussion did not say we would disqualify. If we're going to disqualify on that basis, we did not have that provision in our specifications in our contract. This leaves us kind of in Never Land. If that's a requirement, we may not award. If it's, and I don't know what AAA means. I mean, what if they're 4A or 2A or whatever? And
I can tell you this, I wish I knew more factually, but this bonding company bonds a lot of contractors. You don't announce that to all the contractors, but they're pretty big in Oregon.
As long as they're an
They're not
A
obscure.
rated, AA, AAA, then I'm comfortable. But if they're a B-rated bonding company, I'm not comfortable.
okay, well, then with some latitude there, fine, put it in the motion, and if for some reason it's not right, we'll be back to see you.
Thank you.
Do we need that in the motion, or do we?
I think you need to, if you expect us to not award the project because of that, then I think it ought to be in the motion.
Okay.
Or a second motion.
Well, then I would make a second motion. Altering my first motion to include it being subject.
Well, the first motion was approved, so.
You would have to make a motion to reconsider if you were going to do that. You might as well make a motion to reconsider. Someone who voted in favor of the prior motion would have to make a motion to reconsider. You'd have to be seconded. You'd have to vote on the motion to reconsider, and then you could re-vote on it and make the modification.
I make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing any opposed? Hear none. Then we
Make a new motion.
make a new motion.
I move that we award construction contract to Enterprises Northwest, Inc., DBA Earthworks Excavating, Inc., in the amount of $559,256 with a construction contingency of $27,962.80, subject to the expiration of protest period, in addition to subject to a agreeable bond rating from the bonding company.
Agreeing be above or in the A category?
Yes, thank you.
A and above.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Eggleton,
Yes.
Quant,
Yes.
Sprague,
Yes.
Tricus,
Yes.
and Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. All right, Lila, we have Water Treatment Plant Control Replacement Award.
Yes, this is a replacement of our control system for the plant that runs all the different specific parts of the plant. It was originally put in 1983 when the plant was built, and so it is 30-plus years old and needs to be replaced. And so the program, or the upgrade, is essential to continued operation of the facility. We've had it malfunction a couple of times, and we have to run the plant manually. And if this system goes down, then we're running the plant manually until we can put it all back together again. And so we've been planning it for quite some time. It's in our capital improvement budget at $220,000. And then we had, so we went out, the legal authority that you can see in the memo, we did the qualification-based selection, and so we went out to 5 different firms and asked them for bids. We gave them a request for proposal, itemized pretty much everything, all the details of what we were looking for. And so we ended up with 2 quotes, or actually 2 proposals. And so those proposals did not include a price, and so we based our decision on the best qualified person or company to do the project. And part of the reason for that was the way they're going to do it in a 5-step situation, so it'll take 6 months, and they'll get all of the equipment to start with, have it in place, and then we'll start doing some testing with that, and if something does happen, at least we have all of the equipment there, and we can move it over within probably a few weeks. But the way we really want to do it is in this systematic, try it, set it all up, run it, and still be able to go back to the old system in case we run into any bugs. Because it's all code, and a lot of the code is not, some of the codes we already have, I guess you'd call them, they're programmed, and we can manage those. The other ones, the other codes are not mapped, and so you have to spend quite a bit of time programming and getting those mapped. And so Taurus Power Controls, who has, they're the control company that worked on the wastewater treatment plant, and they've also been working on our telemetry. They had the best implementation plan for us. And so that's why we went with them, asked them for their proposal, which was within our budget at $205,153, and then we were asking for a 10% contingency. So I'm not sure if you have any questions about this. It's something that we've talked about in workshops before. And
questions from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Taurus, is that the same as PBS Engineering, Lila?
no, PBS Engineering is the company that does our engineering for our water lines, and they're actually their company that's going to do the construction services on the water line that Stephanie was just talking about. So PBS is not part of that company. Do I have something in there that
Perhaps I'm looking at the
wrong memo?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do have Taurus Power and Controls. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the other proposer was Portland Engineering, so they were a very good firm as well.
Just, I think we've all grown to be sensitive to anything computerization and software. This is a combination of the equipment, new equipment, and then it's not rewriting new software.
It's all new equipment, and then they are moving the programming and essentially rewriting the programming, and then we'll be able to manage it, because there are parts of our system now that are just, the code's not written down, and so they have to go out and troubleshoot and try to figure out what's going to make things work correctly again. So it takes time.
And the nice thing is we're working now so that we've got the backup as they create this new one.
Yes. Great. And so we're looking at 6 months. They would probably be done in February by the time we get the contract put together.
Good.
And
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
The current system has been fine for over 20 years and operated. How long will this upgrade take us?
This one they're saying 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah.
Good.
And the last one actually did last 30 years. We've had some trouble with it. New Year's Day, Lonnie called me and said the program's not working, and we were calling in. Actually, it was Taurus that came and troubleshooted that for us, but the plant would not operate under these controls. You have to manually operate it, and that means you have to have someone there 24/7 until you get this fixed. And it's difficult to run the plant manually.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we request staff to authorize the contract with Taurus Power Controls, Inc. for the engineering and installation services as outlined in the scope of work in the amount of $205,153 with a 10% contingency.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Roll call, please.
Quant,
Yes.
Singleton, Norikis,
Yes.
Sprague,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a water main line replacement, Schooner Creek Bridge boring and Cutler City to Bridge Design Award.
Another main
Yeah.
project. This is on our capital list, one of our high priority projects. This is on Highway 101 from Cutler City to Taft. The current water line is steel and asbestos cement. It's old, and it's 10 to 12 inches. We need to replace that line. We're proposing to upsize it to a 16-inch diameter, and also a couple other, there's definitely deterioration in those lines. But we're proposing to do another boring project, at least look at the feasibility of the boring project under the Schooner Creek Bridge. Currently, that portion is attached to the bottom of the bridge, or the side. We'd like to get it underneath, and so we're also recommending that we did a qualification-based selection process for the engineering firm to design this project, and as Lila said, we selected PBS Engineering and Environmental for our water line projects, for most of them. What happens is you select the consultants based on their qualifications, and then negotiate a price, a scope with them, and then a price for the work. So while they gave us a very nice proposal, very detailed scope of work, very detailed cost estimate, and I will say something about PBS Environmental. There's been several projects that we've authorized them to spend more money than they will. We've authorized a larger amount of money that they've ended up spending. So they're one of those engineering firms that doesn't just spend to the end of their allotted budget. You know, they really pay attention and work closely with staff. So with that, I'm explaining that a little bit because we estimated, we budgeted $150,000 for engineering for this project. In fact, when we sat down with PBS and went over the scope of work and what we would take, the dollar amount that they're asking for is $190,706. Now, the primary difference, I can tell you since I was involved in the estimate of that, is we tended to think that staff would cover a lot of the construction inspection, construction services. We like to do that, and it certainly is a big component of the engineering cost. But with the resources and with the technical work that they're designing, we would rather have PBS do all of the construction inspection and management. So totaling the design, the project management, preliminary design, final design, bid services, and construction services, their total engineering services would be $190,706. So we are asking that we enter into a services contract, engineering services contract with PBS as outlined in this scope for the amount of $190,706.
Stephanie, am I correct in assuming that if we don't award the construction, we would not be spending $62,616?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things I want to point out to council about this project, if you ask ODOT when they replace Schooner Creek Bridge where they're going to put it, you're going to get a "I don't know" answer. And so one of the tricks on this project is going to be to try to put this line where it's not going to have to be moved a second time. And that may mean, because of boring, that you can get far enough away from the bridge that there's no way that ODOT can plant a bridge on top of it. I think that would be the first priority to do.
That's the plan.
The second is to coordinate closely enough with ODOT to have at least a good guess on where a new bridge would be put. It's still a little bit iffy.
And Stephanie, do I recall other conversations on this line? It is a bottleneck because of the size, pipe sizes shrink right at that point, and then larger on the other ends.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
This is a bottleneck.
Okay. Other questions from Council? Roger?
I meant to ask this when we were talking about the Schooner Creek pipe on the boring project. If we have a Richter 7 or higher earthquake, is that pipe, when it's bored that deep, is that subject to ripping apart and that sort of thing?
It is vulnerable at the connections to the hard pipe, to the pipe that's buried. Then the thing about, well, we try to make them as seismic proof as possible, of course. But with this particular line, using polyethylene pipe, it's a little more forgiving. It can move around a little bit more without breaking apart. But your vulnerability for the damage from an earthquake is more where the bore connects to the pipe that's buried in the ground. So
we have joints then that are 25 feet deep or whatever the depth of the bore is then?
Correct.
And so if a connection breaks there, then where are we?
Well, we would have access to those connections, but
We'd have to dig down to get at them.
They won't be that deep.
this pipe under Schooner Creek Bay, under by the bridge, is probably not going to be as deep as that section we just approved you guys just approved for construction. That one's particularly deep because of the siltstone layer. And again, though, that's real preliminary engineering look. I can't say how deep this will be, but yeah, in an earthquake, we'll have to get to the line to repair.
So with
that break is.
With either one of the bores, there's or a peril there potentially then with a large earthquake.
Yes.
Other questions, Chester?
Our only other option is to hang it off the bridge again?
Yes, well, we talked about that option with ODOT. We've pressed ODOT for something about future alignment, what their plans are. They're not committing. But one option that looks pretty feasible is they would replace it in place. They would replace that bridge near the existing alignment. There wouldn't be they wouldn't move it much. When we look at the cost of this boring project, if it makes a lot of sense, we will still consider hanging it on the new bridge, putting it on the old one, and then replacing it with the new bridge. That's not our first approach, but that's something that we're keeping in mind during the design and discussions with ODOT.
When and how would you make that decision?
Well, it's going to have to come pretty quickly. We'll have to decide during the preliminary engineering phase what we're going to do, what exactly our alignment's going to be, and verify that we're going to bore it rather than hang it on the bridge.
If you were to hang it, would it be considerably cheaper?
Yes, probably. I mean, the boring is very expensive, but so is constructing, pipe on a bridge that who knows what its actual, and we'd have to look at the rating of the bridge today. I'm not even sure if it's feasible, so that's just something we're going to look at in the preliminary engineering and get a better answer to that question.
And if we approve this proposal and you decide to hang it off the bridge, would that come back to us for another approval?
We could certainly keep you informed, yes, but it wouldn't. This design is this engineering contract is to take it to final design. So we weren't planning on coming back to you with an alternative analysis and why we chose the alternative that we chose. We can certainly do that.
Stephanie, some of this work, or as we enter into this design engineering work, will help determine, will it not, whether hanging it on the bridge or continue the boring?
Right. Right.
Okay.
So during the preliminary design, we would solidify those numbers, those options, and really see what we have. This is, right now, this scope is based on what we think we're going to construct and design and construct. Yeah. But it won't change that much. If we decide to go with a bridge hang, the engineering probably won't change that much.
And we need to replace this main, whether we hang it off the bridge or whether we bore it.
We need
Is
to
that true?
replace this main. It's leaking, it's a bottleneck. It's not in the best alignment on Highway 101 right now. We'd really like to get in a better location for some vulnerability issues, for some seismic vulnerability issues, and just to have a better pipe that's reliable.
And this replacement main is part of the city backup water transmission loop?
Correct.
Supply the city in the event that the primary 24-inch diameter water transmission main became disabled?
Right, so it feeds the
Backup?
it feeds the south end of town, and it's also a backup in case our transmission is offline.
So a very important segment of our system.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions?
One more question, Your
Okay.
Honor. All of these tasks, we've got 5 tasks, Stephanie. That covers the entire project, management, design, construction, nothing else that we're going to be faced with? Is that true?
Well, of course, the award of the bid to build it. I mean,
Yeah, this isn't building.
this is design.
This is simply design.
This is only
design
design.
and construction inspection.
Yeah, doesn't include permitting, doesn't include construction, and,
Do we have an estimate on construction?
yes, we have a budget number of,
Ron, do you remember?
750,000, I think.
Looking it up.
So close to $1 million.
Yes, it was close to $1 million.
But all
This
added
was
in.
about 10%. It could even be more. I don't remember what it was. I just don't have it with me.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
are we budgeted for that then, for the whole $1 million project?
Yes.
Okay.
This was part of the water bond that we sold.
Oh, okay.
Other questions? Hearing none, and I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion to so move, take staff recommendation of approving the engineering service contract with PBS in the amount of $190,706.
Seconded.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Roll call, please.
All right. Norikis,
Yes.
Eggleton,
Yes.
Quant,
Yes.
Sprague,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
That should do it on the water for a while?
You're on the water for
Yeah, thank
while.
you. Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I might remind certainly council and the public that we just passed the budget in July, so this is a new fiscal year, so we've been certainly analyzing this stuff and getting it ready, so we want to give the fiscal year, get it jump-started, so that's why you're seeing a lot of this stuff right up front and early. Next is a discussion item, Farmers Market Ordinance Amendment.
Mayor and councilors, the Farmers and Crafters Market Board has asked for a couple of changes to the existing ordinance regulating farmers market in the city. Right now, anybody who wants to participate in the farmers market as a vendor has to come from Lincoln County or any of the adjacent counties. And there's a second provision that says that no more than 50% of the vendors can be craftspeople as opposed to people selling food and nursery stock and so on. The staff suggestion is that with respect to where the vendors can be from, at least as far as the people selling food and nursery stock and so on, they could be from anywhere in Oregon. We have the situation now where, because Lane County is so big and it is adjacent to Lincoln County at the south end, You could have somebody 150 miles away that can participate, but somebody in McMinnville who's 50 miles away can't participate. And to correct that sort of anomaly, it seems like a good idea to expand the area that people can be from, and why not all of Oregon, and sort of let the vendors regulate themselves on whether they want to come or not. The second piece of it is about the craftspeople as opposed to food and plant people. And again, right now, they're limited to the adjacent counties, and as I said, no more than 50% of the vendors. The board has asked that rather than saying no more than 50% of the participants, that it would be no more than 50% of the members of the farmers market could be, we'll call them crafters. That's sort of the potential approach. It's where the potential is that no more than half will be craftspeople. I had put in my staff report that an alternative to that would be that over the course of the season that they operate, no more than half would be craftspeople. So that's the actual as opposed to potential. The way it's set up now, it's actual every week is what the rule is. The suggestion just having it just over the course of the year recognizes the fact that early in the season, maybe some people selling food, for example, their food isn't ready to sell yet because it's not ripe or whatever. It's not the season. Either approach, I think, what I'm calling the actual or potential, just the number of members, period, or the number of participants over the year. Either one, I think, would be an improvement over the situation we have now. The main drawback to the suggestion I make about over the course of the year is that there's a record-keeping burden with that. But it does keep with the sort of the intent of the farmers market, that it be a farmers market and not like a Saturday market kind of craftsman's thing. I also suggest that the area that the craftspeople come from be smaller than the state. They can be anywhere in the state within 100 miles, and that would probably tend to limit the number of, or the potential number of craftspeople to potentially balance more equitably, I guess, with the food and plant people. So what I'm asking tonight is for your feedback on that, and if you think either or both of those ideas are good, that you direct us to prepare a draft ordinance and bring it back to you. And there is a draft ordinance, a draft ordinance, basically, in your packet. It gives you an idea of exactly what we're talking about there.
I'm going to add to that. I can endorse those changes, but I urge council to be a little cautious that we not relax the rules too much to protect the businesses in town that have an established place, a building, a presence. What we don't want is 25 farmers markets on the weekends and in the summer selling crafts. So a farmer's market has a very specific definition here. We're talking about changing that a little bit. I urge us not to go too far with that change. I can endorse those kind of changes that Richard's saying. But again, we don't want 25 or 30 or farmers, quote, farmers markets to spring up on weekends all over town. That's the purpose of the regulations.
That's helpful, because that's in my notes as to if somebody could help us with why we're involved.
That's why.
Okay. And that makes good sense. So, other questions of staff, gentlemen? Yes, Chester.
You spoke about an administrative burden, Mr. Townsend. Would that fall on the city or would that fall on the board?
It would fall on the board, essentially. it could go either way, but I think what we would do is just check the records, or if there was a concern, you could check the records and see, how many people over the course of time.
Right.
You still have the if you're just doing it for the season as opposed to just number of members, you're still going to have to, the board is going to have to keep track on a weekly basis.
I don't attend the market every week, but every time that I have attended, there's maybe 10% of the vendors who are selling food and/or nursery stock. My experience has been, do we have some members of the board here who can speak?
So.
Who can speak to that?
We can't, any comments have to be done up here, or it's not part of the meeting, and it doesn't get aired, and it's not part of the history of the meeting.
So, what, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Why don't you come up, just... Go ahead and sit down and introduce yourself and kind of give us your
My name is Megan Gill, and I am the president of the board of the Lincoln City Farmers and Crafters Market.
And I'm Lori Lemons, and I'm the vice president of the Lincoln City Farmers and Crafters Market, and our executive board is here also.
Great.
Does my experience reflect reality?
No, it does not. According, to your ordinance, for the city ordinance, which states, a farmer is someone who grows, harvests. I don't have the ordinance right in front of me.
You gather your driftwoods and things you
or
gather on the beach.
Grown, gathered, raised, processed, or caught fresh, or processed foods and nursery stock. And so saying 10% of our vendors know that it is even. We have an even amount. Maybe when you came before, it's been early in the season, and we don't have a very big grow season here. So early in the season, there's not a lot out there represented. But we have done very good to keep track and have 50% farmers or what is considered a farmer, and 50% crafters. And so a farmer, that would be someone who sells jellies and jams. That would be someone who also is selling, we have another person who grows plants. Anyone who's growing plants, we have a succulent vendor, we have various nursery vendors, and they don't always attend every weekend. Most of our vendors don't attend every weekend because there's other things that happen throughout the summer, other events that they will go and vend at. So, and then that also includes hot food people are considered part of the agricultural section too. Our bakers are considered they're done by agriculture. So no, I would say it's definitely 50-50. It's not 10%. That's a miscalculation.
Thank you. That helps. Other questions of the board while they're here?
The only concern I have is just that it doesn't become a flea market.
Well, no, we don't want a flea market either.
Not at all.
That's not anything. And there's another ordinance that all has to, our rules too, it has to be handcrafted by the vendor. We don't allow resale. It has to be 90% made by the crafter, and we discourage farms bringing produce from other farms. There are some, I guess, where people trade goods, where a watermelon vendor might trade with their neighboring farmer for strawberries, and we encourage them to just bring what they're growing. We don't want, because we don't know that then they're responsible for that person's strawberries. We don't want that problem. We want to have only what the farmer has grown at our market, or only what the crafter has handmade themselves at our market.
Can you police that?
Yes, we do, very strictly.
Okay, thank you.
Of the two options regarding the percentage, one being just tracking 50% members, seems less onerous and record-keeping and stuff than the one over the course of the year.
Yes.
Is that correct? That would be the analysis?
Yeah.
Okay. And that works, either one works for you, but that would be...
Either one works for us.
Okay. And the 100-mile radius on the craft is also, makes sense?
Yes, the 100-mile radius for the crafters does make sense. I mean, a lot of the founding members originally, before some of them retired in Lincoln City, had come from areas further away than what is currently allowed now. Okay. And they are the ones who helped to start that market. And so, I would hate to see founding members who, I guess a lot of them, though, have now retired in Lincoln City. But, they started it, and if we change the way it's written now, they wouldn't be able to be members if they were still where they had originally resided.
Thank you. That helps.
Yeah. And, I mean, and you have to recognize that on the coast, we don't really have a lot of farming areas. So opening it to the state of Oregon would then allow us to have a wider variety to offer and have a wider variety brought in for us.
Good. All right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thanks for the clarifications, too.
Yeah.
So, Council, this is where we'd give direction back to staff. Are you comfortable, with the suggested changes, that being statewide Oregon farmers, and then crafts perhaps being 50% of membership versus,
Yes, I see no problem with it.
versus vendor,
Problems.
in the 100-mile radius? So, Mr. Townsend, you'd bring that back then, an ordinance that would so modify and...
Yes, be happy to.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we have now public hearing time. This is a public hearing to receive public comment on proposed substantial amendment of urban renewal plan. We see you guys an awful lot. I hope you're going to explain why we see you.
Twice each time.
Boy,
I prefer presenting at the urban renewal meeting, too.
If Kurt was still here. Yeah. That's his bedtime.
You guys are heroes. So as you all know, and for the benefit of the viewing audience, we're in the final stages of an amendment to the city's urban renewal plan. Phase one of that process was to confer with all the taxing districts. In February, the agency authorized the time extension of the district through a minor amendment. In the final step of this process is the ordinance to expand the district boundary to allow for the agency to fund additional projects. Elaine Howard is here and has been through the entire process. She's been assisting us with this process and is prepared to provide some additional information this evening and be able to answer any questions that you might have.
So thank you. And as Kurt said, this is the next to the last step in the process that we've been going through. So the public hearing is tonight, and then in 2 weeks, you'll actually read the ordinance and vote on the ordinance. So it's gone in front of the county commission, it's gone to the planning commission, it went to the urban renewal agency to come, and this is the required public hearing portion of the amendment. Because it's an amendment that increases the land by more than 1% of the original acreage, it's called a substantial amendment. And a substantial amendment is prescribed by the statute on what has to be included in a substantial amendment. And one of those things I think has caused a bit of consternation in your community, and I wanted to address it up front, and that is the public notice that went out to people. And the statute requires what is said in a public notice for a substantial amendment. And the last thing it says is the adoption of the amendment may impact property tax rates period, is what it requires you to put from the statute. That language is left over from when urban renewal actually did impact property tax rates, but when Measure 5 and Measure 50 were passed and property tax rates aren't impacted, no one went through and changed that part of the statute. So that's still required to be put in a public notice. We changed that. My attorney and I have gone through this and tried to figure out, well, how do we address that, because it doesn't really affect property tax rates unless there's only one specific thing, and that's if you have general obligation bonds that were issued prior to 2001. So, and there are very few of those left out there in Oregon. You guys have one of those, and it's issued by the fire district. And so this ordinance that we're going to talk about, if approved, would have the most minimal impact on property tax rates because of that prior to 2001 fire district bond. But it would be pennies on anybody's property tax bill. But because it's required by statute, we had to put that in the notice. We tried to make it as specific as we could by adding the language about the bonds, but that's why it was in, and if people ask you about that, that's the reason. So, ready to go through the... There we go. So, as Kurt said, a minor amendment to the plan was passed last February, and that minor amendment allowed for an extension of the last date for urban renewal for 10 more years. And it also said that you would share property tax revenues with the taxing jurisdictions. So the urban renewal agency would take 20% of those revenues over that time period, and the taxing jurisdictions would take 80%. So it gave them a big share to say, we'd really have these projects that we'd like to do. This is a funding source that works for us, and are you willing to go with us here and let this happen? And everybody agreed with that, and so that was passed. So this amendment just helps implement making those projects happen, because some of that property wasn't actually in the urban renewal area and needed to be added to the urban renewal area. So the amendment adds 34.51 acres, that's 29.19 in parcels, and 5.32 in right-of-way. Whenever we make changes to acreage, we have to make sure it meets the statutory requirements for not having more than 25% of your total acreage in urban renewal, and not adding more than 20% of your original acreage in an amendment. And this meets both of those requirements. So these maps show the acreage that's added, and you can see that it's shown in kind of the orangish color. It's a little hard to see. And there are a lot of parcels all over the place, and there's right-of-way. And the right-of-way is to do some of those infrastructure projects where you're connecting. And the little parcels are property owners who have either expressed interest in using some of your loan programs, or where the agency thought that they might be good candidates to use those programs if they wanted to in the future. So you can see they're kind of mixed all through the area. So while we were doing this, your staff and I went through your urban renewal plan and tried to find anything else that needed to be updated at the same time, just to make sure that your document was very thorough and complete. So this just covers all of those changes that are being made, and they're all pretty minor except for the addition of acreage in the plan. In the exhibits, there were a couple of resolutions that weren't referred to that should have been referred to. Section 100 is the one that's most changed because it updates the acreage and assessed value information. Section 300 adds a new legal description to incorporate the property that would be added. Section 400, you have to say why the property and this action conforms to your comprehensive plan, and that's what your Planning Commission voted on a couple of weeks ago. There was an additional zoning category, and you have to identify in your plan all the different land uses and zoning categories, and so we just made sure that we cleaned that up and added that other category. Section 600, in the minor amendment in February, we talked about a project that was doing workforce housing, and so we added language in to make that specific within the plan, so that the plan contained all of that language that you had talked about in the prior amendment. Section 700 is also updated just for what you passed in the prior amendment, so we just put it within the plan. And then we found a couple of typographical errors that we corrected. The projects have not changed since we've gone over this with you. So these are the projects that will be contemplated in the extension of the area. The first three were the three that were not currently in the plan that are now going to be in the plan, so you can achieve those. And those are really, the top two, kind of the main thing that we're going after were those lift stations, to upgrade those lift stations so that future development could occur in your city that couldn't occur at this point. The financial implications are very small because your maximum indebtedness is not increasing. You're keeping the same maximum indebtedness. In the minor amendment, as I said, you specify you're only taking 20% of any tax increment revenues, and that hasn't changed. So the implications are very small. The only thing that does change is a little bit is because of adding new property, that new property does have assessed value, and so your frozen base will change because the total assessed value of that property at the time that it's added in will be added to your frozen base, and then any increment that is brought in off of the increased value of that property in the future will be additional property tax revenues, and that's identified within your plan document. It's fairly minor amount, and in the long run, all it does is allow you to reach your maximum indebtedness earlier. It doesn't increase that maximum indebtedness, it just allows you to reach it a little earlier. The 2014 bond that was anticipated through all of this action was actually issued on June 17th, and there is another bond that's expected to be issued in 2018. This is the process that we went through, and just because this is a formal public hearing, I'm going to step through that very quickly. You have to notify all of the different taxing districts, and you did that. You have to have the Planning Commission meeting. We did a Lincoln County Commission briefing, a super notice, which means notifying all property owners within the city of Lincoln City. This is the hearing tonight, and then in 2 weeks you will have the vote. The vote is on a non-emergency ordinance, which means it does not go into effect for 30 days. I went through that with you at the first, and that's that very confusing language that's left over from prior urban renewal. I'm going to do a very quick how does urban renewal work, just for people who might be watching this on the television, just to cover that. So when an urban renewal area is formed, the total assessed value of that area is calculated by your assessor, and that area value is then called the frozen base, and the taxing jurisdictions continue getting increment continue getting property taxes off of that frozen base. Any increased value in that area, assessed value, the property taxes off that increased value goes to property taxing jurisdictions, I'm sorry, I'm trying to hurry too fast. Any increase in value shown by the blue goes to the urban renewal agency over the lifetime of the urban renewal plan. After urban renewal is over, so you are increasing the property taxes within the area by doing projects that help to stimulate your economy and stimulate growth within the area. So the different taxing jurisdictions should then at that point receive increased property taxes over that which they would have anticipated having if urban renewal did not exist. So that can be shown, the frozen base is what's shown in the orange, so that stays the same. The taxing jurisdictions still get their taxes off of that. Any increase is shown in the blue, and the agency gets the increase in taxes off of that blue portion. And again, the revenue sharing is something that's an option that you have decided to do. It's not a requirement by statute. And you're sharing 20% to the agency and 80% to the taxing jurisdictions. Any questions?
Great. That's good explanation.
I was thinking that there was one more step in that list of steps that you were talking, because the Urban Renewal Agency had to approve this as well.
It did.
And that wasn't included in there.
Thanks for catching that. They had to start, the Urban Renewal Agency actually starts the process. Right. And you're right, absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions, council, staff? Yep.
The 2018 bond.
That's when they hope to issue the next bond that will help you meet your full maximum indebtedness. So that's when your finance director is looking to issue the final bond for your tax increment authority, that maximum indebtedness authority that you have. So it's a bond in the future that you're anticipating issuing.
Thank you. I'll question Mr. Tierney further in private.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're good. We'll see if there's any public comments. Thank you both.
Thank you.
This would be the time for any public comments to be made. Would appreciate coming forward. Seeing none. Is there any other public agencies? Nobody else wishes to make a comment? Okay. Then I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed with the nay? Hearing none? Okay. We are at the city managers.
Mayor, I think you've all been meeting since about 1:30, so I'm going to cut this a little bit short. And we'll come back to the crime stats at a future meeting. I'll do the economic updates because it's so brief. I can do it in a couple of minutes.
Mr. Ruck, now you're not going to put us in jeopardy with the chief, are you, by, having him sit all through this and not get some limelight?
No, I already cleared him.
Did he clear? Okay. Thank you.
As you know, our chief is at most of our meetings for the duration. So, I'm just going to report on three things real quickly. Gross lodging revenue, which is what we get our transit room tax off, but maybe more importantly, it's one of the major fuels of our economy. I'm going to compare on all these 6 months of the calendar year to the previous year first 6 months. Now, we're not talking about fiscal year, we're talking about calendar year here on all of these. So overall, we're up a little over $3.5 million on gross lodging revenue, of which we get 9.5% of that. That's 16.23% up from last year. Good news, but if you take Roads End out of that equation, which we didn't have last year, we're up 5.7%. Still a good, healthy increase. But here's what was a little astounding to me. For the first 6 months of the year, Roads End represented 9.2% of all of our gross room revenue. That's substantial. And now overall, VRDs represent almost 22% of the gross room rental. And you may recall that the last number we had when Roads End was not in it was about 12%. Had grown from 8 to 12% over the last 5 years. And now with Roads End added in, it's about 22% for the first 6 months. We don't know how that'll hold on the remaining peak months. Building act, and I would say that aside from Roads End, just having the 5.7% increase for the first 6 months is pretty good. And I would say that that's due mostly to favorable weather and a slowly improving economy. Building activity is up. The value of the building is up $5.3 million. That's 111% over the first 6 months of previous year. Due in large part to commercial. If I look at just the residential for the first 6 months, it's still up 24%. So we're seeing building activity. Trash, which you've seen in stuff that we sent in your email, but just for the public, wood waste is up 16%, recycling is down 3%, garbage trash is up 11%. Those are economic indicators, particularly the trash service, the garbage, and the wood waste, are real good advance indicators of what's going on in our economy. So I see that as a good trend. I have sheets on these numbers, and the back side of the sheet has the gross room rental by all kinds of things, by motel, B&Bs, condos, RV parks, et cetera. And so it'll give you a better idea now of where our gross room rental and where our transit room tax comes from. And I'll pass those out before when the meeting's over. And with that, I had nothing else. We'll come back to crime stats at a future meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Apicella, anything? Okay. Well, then, let's involve you with ordinances, if you don't mind. We'll move to ordinance number 2014-16.
Your Honor, this is second reading of an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title 17 zoning, Chapter 1720, multiple family residential RM zone, amending Section 1720.050, minimum lot area and density requirements, and Section 1720.100, other required conditions relating to standards for multifamily housing developments. We need a motion approving second reading and adopting the ordinance. Second reading of ordinance 2014-16.
So moved.
Seconded.
We have a motion with a second. Discussion? We talked a lot about this last time, and no changes, so roll call, please.
Sprague,
Yes.
Norikis,
Yes.
Eggleton,
Yes.
Want,
Yes.
and Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And we have ordinance number 2014-19.
Okay, Your Honor, this is first reading of an ordinance amending the Lincoln City Municipal Code, Title II, Administration and Personnel, amending Chapters 2.05, Public Contracts, clarifying Urban Renewal Agency contract authority, and correcting the change order / contract amendment limit to correspond with previously approved delegated authority. And in the staff communication, essentially, this is a little bit of cleanup. Number one, you may recall recently we had a contract item on both Urban Renewal and City Council, and I just wanted to make clear that it's not necessary to do that. In that case, I think it was appropriate to do anyway, but this just modifies the language slightly to say it's okay. And then the second change is that the city manager has $50,000 worth of contract authority, which is actually half of his actual authority, and he's voluntarily cut it in half, but he only has $25,000 worth of amendment authority. So if he approves a $20,000 contract, and then there's a request for something like we saw this evening, add-on work, and the amount of the add-on work is $30,000 or $26,000, while that would be within his delegated authority, it's not. It's more than the amendment authority. So what we're asking is that we simply reference the delegated authority limit for that $50,000 varies by type of contract. So he actually has $75,000 on certain kinds of contracts and $50,000 on others. We just want to match that as opposed to just a holdover from before, which was the $25,000. That's not to say that we will not bring to you contract amendments. We will bring to you amendments for contracts that you approved. So only things that remain within his contract authority would stay with him.
Okay.
So I'm looking for, after discussion, a motion to approve first reading and continue second reading to the next meeting, or we can do second reading tonight if you'd like.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Move that we adopt ordinance number 2014-19.
Approve first reading.
First reading, right.
Second.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Discussion. Pretty clear explanation. Okay. Roll call, please.
Okay. Norikis,
Yes.
Eggleton,
Yes.
Want,
Yes.
Sprague,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Would you like me to proceed
Yeah,
with the second?
Would you consider?
Let's do the second reading.
Okay. Well, then, if we're going to pass this finally, I need to bring up an issue here because I'm not sure either I understand it correctly or whether that's going to amount to a fairly serious change. In the past, when council approved a contract, before we changed the contracting rules to the more current rules, previous city attorney always opined that the city manager had the authority to approve contingency amounts up to $25,000 or 10%, or excuse me, 10% of the contract not to exceed $25,000. As I heard what, and I haven't dug into this very deeply, what Richard said is if council approves a contract and doesn't approve a contingency amount, that I couldn't approve a $1 change order. Am I reading that? Is that correct? Because if that is, it's a substantial change, because we were also advised not to routinely have council approve a contingency, because it signals to the contractor that there's additional money on the table. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this, and what I don't want to have happen is if we absolutely have to have you approve a contingency every time, then I need to advise staff, don't come to me for a $1 change order.
Why don't we then, rather than put on the spot, take a look at it and bring it back for second reading?
If you would like to, all you need is an additional motion that sets second reading for, what's our next meeting? The 25th.
25th. So the motion would be set second reading to this locale, August 25th, 2014, 6 p.m.
So moved. Close the written record until, have the written record open until noon on August the 20th, 2014.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Hearing? Yep.
All right. Eggleton?
Yes.
Quant?
Yes.
Sprague?
Yes.
Norikis?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So we'll
Yeah, I
give
just
us
need to
time
get that
to look at
clarified.
that, yeah.
And
I
it
think
could be that I misunderstand it, so.
And then ordinance number 2014-20, first reading.
Your Honor, this is first reading of an ordinance of the City of Lincoln City amending the adopted, amended, and restated Year 2000 Development Plan for the Lincoln City Urban Renewal Agency, making determinations and findings related to Amendment 2, approving the amendment and associated documents, and directing, recording, and publication of notice of approval. We're looking for approval of first reading and set second reading for August 25th, with receipt of written comments noon on the 20th.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve first reading with a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Eggleton?
Yes.
Norikis?
Yes.
Sprague?
Yes.
Quant?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then we have resolution.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Just a question on ordinances before we leave that. On item 16, where we're going to have a second reading, it can be amended and not have to have another reading after the second reading because of that, right?
That's right. All I have to do is read any change that occurred between the first reading and the second reading.
Okay. Thank you.
This is resolution number 2014-20, a resolution recognizing the Roads End Improvement Association as a neighborhood association pursuant to Lincoln City Citizens Involvement Program. Entertain a motion.
So move.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve with a second. Any discussion?
Just that we're including the three areas that we covered during the discussion earlier. That was,
The what now?
yeah, I'm just getting too tired. There was three items brought up they were supposed to take care of in the discussion earlier.
I believe that was mentioned in the resolution that they have 1 year to resolve.
There was, okay, that was in the resolution? Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Mr. Mr. Sprague?
I just want to mention that before this meeting, I was reticent to recognize one association when there was another association that was forming. And that second association came and said they support the REIA. So with that, I'm supportive.
Great. Roll call, please.
Norikis?
Yes.
Eggleton? Quant?
Yes.
Sprague?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. This would be a time for citizen comments. Anybody interested in a comment at this time? Come forward. Seeing, hearing none, I'll turn to council. Mr. Norikis, any comments for this evening?
I do have a comment, Mr. Mayor. I would like to commend Nikki Price for her work in creating or helping to create a new direction with a partnership with North Lincoln County Schools and the Siletz Bay Music Festival. There was a school grant from the Oregon Community Foundation, and the Cultural Center, along with the school district, not the school district, Taft Elementary, Taft High, Siletz Bay Music Festival, are all working together to promote music for young people in the city. And I'd like to commend all the people involved. Thank you.
But Ken, that includes the Ocean Lake Elementary, so all three schools
Yes.
and the administrations were heavily involved.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a coup, quite frankly, it's something like 200 and...
10,000?
250.
Yeah. I think it's up a little higher as well. I know it says 210 there, and then there's some options for up to like 280 or
It
something.
was 280 or 250 is what I heard.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for recognizing that, reminding the citizens that they allowed this council to, in the early days, partner with the hospital and the Siletz Tribe in order to keep music in the schools. So we contributed funds, the three entities, because we saw the importance of music in schools, and that was some of the things that were being cut. And I think what we had hoped was eventually things would come around and it'd get back funded, and this certainly is a big step to keep it in the schools. So, thank you, Mr. Norikis.
Not only was Nikki involved, but the Principal Klingsporn, Principal Lupo, and Principal Tolan were also involved. I'd like to commend them as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sprague?
Just a comment about the tour that we took earlier this afternoon. We had the opportunity to meet with the forester who was the, I guess you would say, the project manager for the thinning project that took place in Agnes Creek open space. And we walked part of that trail. It's really nice, and I invite the public to take advantage of that. This does not have a circular trail. There are two separate trails, but that's really a wonderful asset to Lincoln City, and it'll help the Agnes Creek timber to thrive, where right now, or before that, it was impacted by the fact that there are too many trees too close together so that they weren't getting the sun. So it's a win-win situation, and it was nice to be able to do that.
Thank you. Gordy?
I have no comment.
Henry? I do a couple of just reminders. Council, we've got a council meeting, special council meeting next Monday, 3 p.m. That'd be August 18th, 3 p.m. And that we had agreed to have a special meeting just on vacation rental dwellings. So see you back here on next Monday. Also, again, out to the public, would certainly welcome additional candidates for city elections. If I'm not mistaken, the cutoff is later this month. I'm thinking the 26th of August, but I would plan on something earlier than that. Have your petitions in with signatures. We can assist. And then this Wednesday, 3 p.m., is an open house for downstairs. You may notice we have a Office of Employment with the state. They serve the, actually, North End County and from Tillamook, South Tillamook. They rent space from us at a very reasonable price, zero. But it's a service we think is important to have locally for our citizens. And they've expanded services and days after notifying us that they were going to have to close. So we think that's a good turnaround to have them here and expand services in days. So you're certainly welcome to see the office Wednesday, 3 p.m. And then finally, again, a public cry, Friday the 15th is Stuff a Bus. That's school supplies. School's right around the corner. Is the time to assist in providing school supplies for our youth. At the big bus will be at Tanger Mall on the 15th. Any other comments? Let's call it an evening then. Thank you. Thank you.